From the start, sports cars and the glacially carved terrain of Watkins Glen were meant for each other. Early on, Can-Am class cars thundered up the S's, the beginnings of legendary battles with Chaparral and McLaren between Porsche and Ferrari. That tradition continues as Rolex sports racing prototypes now whistle up the S's, and for the last 8 years, the feud has been equally intense. It's been Dyson versus Doran, and recently it's been Weaver versus Taze. Dyson has even fortified their attack, bringing back Butch Leitzinger fresh off his 4th place at Le Mans. Such is the prestige of winning the 6 hours at the Glen. Up next, right here on Speed. In the late 1950s and early 60s, when sports car racing was truly beginning to bloom in America, 3 tracks quickly sprang to prominence. Out west, it was Riverside. Down south, it was Sebring. But out east, it was Watkins Glen International. Each of these 3 tracks shared something special and unique. They've each hosted a round of the United States Grand Prix, and they've each hosted a round of the World Championship of Makes. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Watkins Glen International in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York. I'm Greg Kramer, and one of those events, the Glen Continental, evolved into a very special race, and its 6-hour variant became one of the most prestigious on the international sports racing calendar. Very happy to have joining me again today, Jeremy Dale. And Jeremy, as prestigious as the event was, at least recently here at the Glen, there's a rivalry that's become almost as legendary.
Well, in fact, Greg, since 1994, every major sports car race here at Watkins Glen has been won by one of 2 teams, the Doran team and the Dyson team, both teams that are well known to sports car racing fans. In 2001, there were 2 major sports car races here, the 6-hour and a 250-miler in August. And what happened last year? Well, Doran won the 6-hour and Dyson won the 250-miler, and it's these 2 teams that we expect to challenge today for the victory in the 6-hour.
As a matter of fact, in 7 of those 9 races, they went 1-2. Such was their dominance. And you called it. They have been very fast here already. Fastest in every practice, one of those 2 teams, and the same in qualifying. For more on that story, let's get down to the grid. And the first of our 2 pit reporters, Sandy Hang.
The pole sitter today is keeping that traditional Dyson-Doran rivalry alive. Butch Leitzinger turned the fast lap. I know it's got to have a lot of meaning, this race, to try to win it for Dyson.
Well, yeah, since '95, it's either been Dyson or Doran who's won this race. And it's the last year that we're racing the open-top prototypes here. So it would be nice to get it to go out on top, to have the last laugh and finally finish out this series we've had.
Any specific concerns coming into this 6-hour race?
Not really. The car's, it's the basic same car we've been running since 1995, so we know it pretty well. There's still a few possibilities of things that can go wrong, but I don't expect anything to.
Okay, well, Butch has a lot of wins here at Watkins Glen, and last time he was here, he won, so look out.
Yeah, we're down here with Didier Taze, and Didier, you won this race here last year, but this year, a little more competition for you. You got 2 Dyson cars you got to beat.
Yeah, with this long race, 6 hours, it's a long race. The balance of the car was a bit off during qualify, and but more or less this morning and on the warm-up, we correct that, and I think we'll have a good race car.
Now, this weekend, you're running the 5-liter for the first time. Is that working out good for you guys?
So far, it's working very well. It's the first race for the engine. I know it's always a little bit scary to start a race, a 6-hour race with a brand new engine, but so far, Judd made some tests with another team before, and it was running fine, and so far, since the beginning of the weekend, we didn't have any problem.
Well, this team started out winning the first 3 races of the year. Didier Taze sharing the driving with Mauro Boldi and Freddie Leinhart Jr. starting 3rd here today at the 6 hours at Watkins Glen.
Thanks, Guy Hobbs, of course, our other pit reporter. Here's a look at the points after 4 of the 10 rounds, and Didier Taze with 3 wins to start the season. Pretty substantial margin, but Dyson and Weaver in particular closing up. John Fields, his Intersport Lola team is not here due to a testing crash, so a big opportunity for some of the other drivers. Let's get back down to Sandy Hang.
In the AGT class, there is a dynamic duo in a Corvette, the number 47 Computer Associates Corvette. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. They're the father-son team of Charles and Rob Morgan. Now, Rob was telling me the last time you raced together in the same car was '97, but when you race against each other, you like to spin him, turn him around, race him hard?
Hey, listen, when he's a lap down and I'm on the lead lap, I can't help it. We do have a little bit of father-son rivalry. I guess you might suspect we both, to be race car drivers, have an ego, and he's got an ego, I've got an ego. We always like to be ahead, both of us do.
When you set the car up, Rob, how do you do it? Do you fight about it, or you like the same things?
No, we tend to like the same thing, which works out really well. So that's why I think we drive so well together, is because either one of us sets the car up and we both like it.
What's it like to drive with your dad?
It's a lot of fun. I like driving with him more than I like driving against him. It's like when you're driving against him, it's like your worst enemy, because I raced against him in the trucks in 99 or 2000, I can't remember, but a little incident where he ran me off the racetrack. I heard about it for 3 years that he beat me.
Well, hopefully that won't be happening today. These guys do have a lot of success together. They've won Daytona and most part together, so we'll see what happens here at Watkins Glen.
I'm down here with Darren Law, and as you can see right now, Darren is still in his civvies. But once the uniform goes on today, Darren, you're going to be working really, really hard. You've opted to drive 2 cars in the 6 hours.
Yeah, I've got my work cut out. I'm starting in the prototype. After the first stint in that, I'll be into the Porsche, and then sometime back in the prototype. It's going to be a long one.
How difficult is the change from the PKO prototype SRP2 class into that Porsche GT3?
You know, actually, it was a little strange at first, because the prototype's like a go-kart, and then the Porsche, you know, it feels real soft and wallowy. But I've been in the Porsches for a couple of years now, so I'm fairly used to it, and I don't know, doing all right now.
Does it take a couple of laps to adjust the braking points?
Yeah, it takes a lap or so to get used to it, but I've been doing it all weekend, back and forth between the two, so I'm pretty comfortable now just jumping in.
Any concern with the heat here today, having to do so much driving?
Yeah, actually, well, we ran the race last night, and I think not so much the heat, but the humidity is the worst part of it. I mean, it's like a sauna inside the car, so I'll be having a lot of hydration going on.
All right, Darren, of course, in these prototypes, too, there's more of muscular activity and more of a workout in the cars than there were in the cars that Darren was driving last night. It's going to be a long, hard day for him. Keep an eye on Darren Law in both the PKO SRP2 and the Porsche GT3 for the G&W Sports.
Thanks, Guy. Darren Law taking multi-class racing to the extreme. When we come back, Jeremy Dale will give us a look at this great track, and then we'll bring you our starting lineup.
Grand American racers, let's roll.
Well, everybody, that was Bob Snodgrass, the CEO of Brumos Porsche, but early on, an upstate New York resident. In fact, he attended the very first race here through the streets of the village of Watkins Glen in 1948. Our Grand Marshal today bringing these sports cars to life for this running of the 6 hours of the Glen. Great to have you all with us, obviously. And there's a look, pole sitter Butch Leitzinger, an awesome job he was able to unfold in qualifying. Of course, hot on the heels of a very competitive run at Le Mans, and alongside will be his teammate and the guy who was generally the leader of this Dyson team in many ways, James Weaver. Good look there at Didier Taze as well. The engines have come to life. And Jeremy Dale, let's take a look now at this track running the long course.
And what a fantastic racetrack. So much history here in upstate New York at Watkins Glen. And of course, this is the long course, as you say, more than 3 miles, 15 turns on this 6-hour event. A lot of very fast sections on this racetrack. As a matter of fact, the slowest corner for these sports prototypes, probably about 80 miles an hour. Average speed in qualifying, more than 120 miles an hour. Great braking zones at the end of the pit straightaway, and of course, into the inner loop at the end of the back straightaway, and the toe of the boot, which is that whole section down in your lower right, and you can see it looks like a boot, and the toe is the section out at the far right-hand end. What a great driver's racetrack this is.
Well, Jeremy, the cars are now out already on their final lap before the start of the race, the pace lap. And however, there's a few of them that weren't able to take to the track. Here's a look at pit lane, and they are queued up, some 7, 8, or 9 deep for a variety of reasons, and we'll certainly update you on that in just a moment or two. But all they're qualifying for not, they're going to have to start at the back of the pack. Once the field comes by and picks up the green, they're in for a bit of a problem here. Meanwhile, let's now get you to the starting grid, and it is a good one here. A lot of cars have shown up in the front row. All Dyson, the 2 forward, Riley and Scotts, Leitzinger and Weaver alongside. In row 2, though, it gets interesting. Didier Taze doing a nice job in the Judd Delar with the new 5-liter engine. We'll talk about that. Buddy Rice back and very fast. Top 4 covered by about a second. Very close indeed. Row 3, Terry Borchler, fastest of the SRP2 cars. The teammates, Nicholas Johnson, that's the Rand Racing Nissan Lolas, fill out row 3. In row 4, it is the Ford Norma. Now, that Norma used to be BMW powered, but Patrice Roussel and the team have changed over to a Ford engine. And third in SRP2, Darren Law in the BMW PKO. He's going to be a very busy gentleman today. We'll talk about that. In the 5th row, inside, GTS pole sitter Chris Bingham has been absolutely flying this year. And then next up, the number 22, nice to see Archangel Racing back with us, 4th in SRP2. Row 6 is the AGT pole sitter. Great job. The father-son team of Charles and Rob Morgan will be starting. Tommy Riggins alongside the AGT category. We take a look now at row 7, and there is your GT pole sitter. And this track you would think would suit that Mosler, and boy has it, Del Barbosa doing a great job here in row 8. Eric Kern is joined up with Darren Brassfield and Irv Hare. That is a strong driver lineup. You see that Court Wagner will be alongside as well. David Murray has shown up now and is driving the BMW M3, the number 54 car that Boris said drove solo. In Phoenix, David has a teammate, but they've qualified well. Row 10, the Chevy Corvette. Andy Richards will be starting any GT3R Porsche of Cass Whitehead. He's a very strong driver out of the Atlanta, Georgia area. Then in row 11, AGT fills out this row, the Corvette of Kerry Hitt and the Camaro of Bub. Then row 12, Scooter Gable in the BMW, Mark Branyan in the Chevy Corvette in the AGT category. 13th row, Kevin Buckler. What a story he's had the past few weeks. And Chris Gleason, then Lars Gerson and Ryan Dobbins fill out row 14. Row 15, Ian James in the Marcos Mantis and Brent Martini in one of the Porsches. There's row 16, Adam Merzon and Jay Policastro, both in GT Porsches. One, though, in GTS. Then Keith Fisher and Joe Nonamaker. And then here is row 18. That's Jacques Guenet and the rest of the field here. And it is, as I said, a very strong field. You notice Oliver Kuttner will be starting last. That's the Lola Porsche that used to run under champion colors. Interesting. Let's go down quickly to Sandy Hang.
We have a reason why all of those cars are starting for pit lane. Grand Am has a rule. 10 minutes prior to the race, you've got to be out or you will start at the back, and they take that rule very seriously. Some of the cars had some technical difficulties. Car number 19 has just had problems all weekend. 91 is a new team, and we're ready to go. Green!
We are green, underway. And look at the protective move there as Weaver cut underneath Leitzinger, trying to blunt any attack by Didier Taze, and it worked. Rice tries to go around the outside down in turn 1. As we've said now, they've widened that turnout, smoothed it off, smoothed that exit curve out. Rice thought about an outside run around, couldn't quite execute it, touched back in. So it is Leitzinger, Weaver, then Taze. There's Buddy Rice driving the Ford, and here go the Q. Now that all the cars have cleared, this Q gets to run. And well, I'll tell you, you worked hard in qualifying and then missed that. That's all gone.
Well, fortunately, it's a 6-hour race.
True.
It's not a 30-minute run. So starting from the pit lane is not an enormous handicap. Having said that, I believe our GT pole sitter is still sitting in pit lane, and we will follow up on that story, but I believe our GT's pole sitter did not make the grid. But James Weaver, in this early stages here on the opening lap, putting pressure on Butch Leitzinger, who is back from Le Mans just 1 week ago, where he drove with the Bentley team and kind of reunited with the Dyson team, hasn't been with them since Sebring. Butch, such a good driver, such a strong driver, pushing James Weaver.
Pushing him right off of the pole as a place we're normally accustomed to seeing James. So there's Leitzinger, then Weaver, then Taze. And take a good look here at James Weaver as he sweeps through. Now, of course, Butch here sort of as an interloper, so James is the one that's working with the points, and his co-driver, young Chris Dyson, son of team owner Rob Dyson. Then, of course, Didier Taze once again teamed up with Freddie Lienhardt's son, Freddie Jr., and they brought Mauro Baldi back, so that lineup has been bolstered certainly as well. And Taze here, they've got a new 5-liter Judd engine, and this is the first time it has run in competition. The Robinson Racing did some testing on it a little bit. This is the first time it's run, and they say it has tremendous promise, at least.
Well, I'm very interested in that engine, because of course that engine, as sports car racing fans know that have followed this team and this car for the past year or so, and especially the Judd power plant, that engine originally designed as a Formula One engine, and there was a derivative spun off that was a sports car version and pumped up to 4 liters. Now at 5 liters, I'm curious if that engine was ever designed to be 5 liters, as Didier Taze trying to go the long way around Weaver, and Weaver won't let him take it.
Having none of that, Weaver played tough, and Taze realized he wasn't going to be able to sweep around, but that's what they were talking about with that 5-liter engine. They basically say it doesn't give him anything more top end necessarily, but it's a lot more torque, and it allows him to climb those S's very, very strongly. And you saw in the Open, a very similar move was what Taze used on Weaver to go for the win here last year, and obviously that car is still incredibly effective in the Dallara trim up through those S's with that Judd power plant. But once you get in the twisty bits, the Riley and Scott with all that downforce starts to ease away a little bit, doesn't it?
Well, no shortage of torque in these big Ford V8s that are in these Dyson cars. And Buddy Rice doing a terrific job hanging on to the top 3 cars. Buddy has certainly done a very solid job with this Riley and Scott, and the 3 lead cars are not driving away from Buddy Rice at all.
No, Buddy Rice is hanging very tough, and Guy Hobbs early in the going here, that car's very competitive.
Yeah, it is very competitive, but one that is not competitive right now is the number 24 GT pole sitter, the Morrison Mosler, Yao Barbosa, and Thierry Perrier. The problem they had is the fueling system is normally on the left-hand side of the car. As you know, like at Daytona, we go the other way, so they need it on the left-hand side when you pit. So they've had to change the fuel intake to the right-hand side of the car. To counter that fuel in the intake, they had to put some balancing weights on the other side of the car, but it's blocking the fuel, so they can't refuel the car. So right now, what they're trying to do is figure out a way to get this weight blocker out of the way so they can fuel the car, so they can get it going. So a tough break for the GT pole sitter. And also just further down the pit lane, the car 29 of Irv Hare and Darren Brashfield that was very quick at Daytona, making its return here. Well, they started from pit lane, and now they're back on pit lane, and we'll chase up on that story for you in just a second.
Thanks very much, Guy. And that Mosler's so fast in qualifying, but just sits there. Meanwhile, we drop back. The AGT battle is heating up. You see the number 47. That is one of the, that's the Morgan & Morgan machine, and it is in a lockstep battle right now with the number 90 Flisbet. Doug Goad has moved over to that car, joining Copperell and Jim Briotti to try and accrue some points. The 09 team car had an engine failure, and they couldn't get it taken care of. And right now, these two covered by just a couple car lengths. And it looked, Jeremy, I think like this AGT class could be one of the real battles as this race unfolds.
I agree, Greg. I think it will be a battle. And just in the last 2 or 3 races, we've seen more cars come into the field, more AGT cars, and better quality cars. And that has made for better racing, tighter racing, more competitive fields, and that's a great thing.
Young Rob Morgan piloting that car. Last couple of seasons, he's been overdoing Craftsman truck, and before that, he actually did some prototype racing in a Ferrari 333 SP when he started his career and quickly stepped into the prototypes and was very strong. Now, you look at the background, the Sky Blue race, excuse me, that's the Riggins machine taking a run at the Celine, the GTS leader, and that car has dropped off just a little bit. We'll have to keep an eye on that Celine. Meanwhile, here comes Morgan, and right there is that number 90 vet.
And we're used to seeing the GTS, the Celine GTS car running in front of these cars. And here's the number 8 Rand Racing machine. That is the leader right now in SRP 2.
Heading down in, that's Borchler, Terry Borchler, the starting driver. Right behind him is one of the SRP machines. That's the Ford Normal. Let's check in with Sandy Heng.
Well, right now the 52 car is on pit lane. Look, you can see they're underneath. They were leaking oil. They think the catch tank has a hole in it, so a setback definitely for this car.
Thanks, Sandy. That's one of the SRP cars, the Power Slide Motorsports Buick Kazoo of Gaffney, Pacwa, and Kraus. And that car really has had some problems here just since the onset, trying to get it up and running. We haven't seen it run much, and I think they're just trying to develop as they go. Meanwhile, now that Ford Norman has gone around the SRP 2 class leader, Borchler, as we go on board with Terry Borchler. And I'll tell you what, these cars very fleet in the SRP 2 division. Not quite the power, but incredibly agile and nimble, and they get in and through these corners very, very quickly.
You saw him on the run from the toes boot up to the heel. He went back kind of towards the middle of the road, very bumpy up the left side of that straightaway, climbing the hill. Now this is where we rejoin the short course.
And the boot, as fascinating as it is a little bit underused and is a little bit rough. But the drivers, when they come in after a session, big grins, running the long course here at the Glen. Welcome back to Watkins Glen, the 6-hour underway in the early pinnings here. And this is one of the GT battles right now, and it is a good one. 13th overall, the Wagner Oberlin, that is the Ferrari, but right behind it, the number 34, that's the Zip Racing Porsche GT3R of Ivankovic Pompelli and Brent Sherman. And they are giving that Oberlin Wagner piloted machine, the Ferrari, all it can handle. Now that car, the Ferrari, qualified second in class behind the Mosler, and it had a little bit in hand over some of the Porsches, but that seems to have evaporated, certainly in race trim.
Well, that car, a brand new race car, and the early versions of these that we saw running were essentially Ferrari challenge cars. Speaking of a challenge,
Getting a big challenge.
But this car now, more of a developed race car into strictly a GT car, and a derivative of the JMB team that won the FIA GT Championship in Europe last year, a derivative of their cars, and they were quite successful, although it does have the Formula One style paddle shifters, which is actually not an advantage, not the advantage you would think it is, because the car doesn't have a proper racing gearbox in it. It has a street-based gearbox in it, which has synchromesh, so it actually shifts quite slowly, although it's glorious on the downshifts, and the Porsche runs wide at the exit onto the main straightaway.
Way wide. Meanwhile, here's our American GT battle, and it is definitely starting to heat up a little bit. That number 90 vet, we believe Doug Goad may have started that car, and he is very fast, and he is chasing Rob Morgan here, and you can see a couple of different lines utilized, just the way that the car is working through the S's, fairly close as well. Now into the inner loop, the chicane they call it here. Very fast section of track, and boy, Goad makes up a lot of ground. He evaporated a couple of car lengths. Oh, and he dives to the inside. Morgan ran a little wide, and Goad read it, just cut down underneath, and has made the pass. Morgan now going to try a counterpunch move. They're side by side momentarily as they head down now into the laces section, if you will, of the boot, as Jeremy likes to call it. And Goad able to plant it right now and hold on to it. Morgan stays close, down into the toe. This is a great corner, isn't it?
This is a great corner. A lot of elevation here, more than you see on the camera for sure. You can really drive the car in there very aggressively. You have to be very tender with the throttle climbing the hill, especially in those GT cars. And here is the overall race lead. There is Butch Leitzinger, there is James Weaver, and there is Didier Taze, as they are heavily involved in lap traffic.
Yeah, it didn't take them long to get through that, and both of the Dyson cars able to knife through. Isn't it nice that Rob Dyson paints the number 20 car black to go with Butch's helmet, and the 16 blue to go with Weaver's? I mean, it's irony, of course, but nonetheless. They're caught in some traffic here, and that is the BMW that started from pit lane that Butch is going to be able to sweep through. It looked to me as though Weaver got bottled up just a little bit. He's now managed to get around that Porsche, but the question is he going to be able to dive bomb and get in? No, the BMW turns in, and that's going to park Weaver, and Butch is going to get a little bit more of a break.
James throws a little glance over there and slides it up into turn 9. Here is the SRP2 battle. This is the race for the lead in SRP2, the Rand Racing Machines.
This is a great battle. Now remember, it is an intra-team, but these two are really allowed to go after it, and that's Borchler, chased by Nicholas Johnson, driving the team entry, the second car. And talk about driver lineups. I mean, we talk a lot about who's in what car in the SRP, the main SRP division, but well, you got Borchler, Lazaro, Kellner's in the number 8 car, Nicholas Johnson, Franchitti, Marino Franchitti, and of course team owner Bill Rand in the 7 car. They can produce, just between the two of them, a great race.
Well, they are not messing around in terms of driver lineup, and if you want to win races, that's what you need to do. You can see the bumps there coming up into turn 8, and the car's not very happy in that braking zone for sure.
Actually talked to a couple of the drivers, and they said that's the one thing here. Otherwise, it's great. The one thing they're having problems with is the bumps in the braking zones is where the car is struggling. It's not so bad in the corners, but the braking zones are just not able to get the dampers figured out quite right. Nonetheless, they're still looking pretty strong in SRP2, of course.
Well, these cars have cornering speeds that are at or even at times greater than their big brothers, but what they lack is horsepower. They're about 200 horsepower down on the big cars, so they just don't get down the straightaways as quickly. But nonetheless, very, very quick cars. We go on board here with Terry Borchler as he climbs the hill, heads down to one of the lowest parts of the racetrack and climbs the hill up through the S's. Now watch him close up here in this braking zone. That's what he'll make up on this Porsche. You can see the Porsche's already on the brakes. Terry much later to the brakes in that prototype, and that is a fairly bold little move in the inner loop. Nicely done. Got to have some faith in the other cars in the racetrack to do that. There is the short course, peels off to the right, and now we head down into the laces.
And now we jump to the AGT battle, which continues to be fierce. The 90 Fliss Motorsports vet has gone to the front, but Morgan got a great run out of the S's and is closed up. Problem is they've got some lap traffic, and that Marcos Mantis just in front, and it blunted the hope that Morgan had, but also now it's going to balk 90 a little bit. And Morgan, if he got a little bit of a run, he's got to be a little careful, because sometimes that car being passed knows one car's coming through but isn't aware of the other one. They both get through okay. And now down into that long left-hander that just absolutely falls away, it seems forever.
That corner is like driving off the edge of the world. There's no question about it. All downhill in the braking zone, all downhill right to the exit of the corner where the car will pick up grip. But it always feels like it's too late. Here is the SRP overall race lead battle, James Weaver has closed it in a little bit on Butch Leitzinger, no question about it.
Big plume of smoke. I just caught in the background of that shot, and I didn't see Weaver, or excuse me, Taze. I don't know that it was him, but he has dropped off a lot, and Weaver has absolutely amped it up here and run down Leitzinger. Heading now, that's the exit, the heel of the boot, that short shoot up, and then rejoining the Glen short course. And the turn here is a good one, but the next one that you can see up in the distance is a very fast corner.
And I guarantee you, Rob Dyson and Pat Smith are going to let these guys race. There is no question about it. These guys will race each other until the final turn of the final lap. That is the way this team operates, and that's the way these drivers operate.
And they are both world class, make no mistake. And they're coming up on this battle, and it continues to be very close. Here they are now, sweeping down into turn one. It's a pretty abrupt fall away here as well, and it continues to drop and right until about the apex here, and then they start that glorious climb to the famous S's of Watkins Glen. Welcome back, and the overall battle and the AGT battle are as one right at the moment. As you can see, Leitzinger and Weaver have just gone by number 47, Morgan, but now they're coming up on the Fliss machine, and we believe Go driving, and are going to get through here. But what that did was that actually gave Goat a little bit of breathing room over Morgan, as much as he's had since this has unfolded. And here we go. That's one of the, I think that's one of our AGT cars has moved over and is letting those two prototypes go. That car, I think, may have been the number 29, the Brassfield and Herb Hare machine. And if that's so, they were considered to be real front runners here and are struggling. But Leitzinger now has his mirrors full of Riley and Scott and Weaver.
No question about it. James Weaver, not the type of guy to cut you any slack.
No.
If Butch Leitzinger makes the smallest mistake, James Weaver will be by. I promise you that.
This is fairly early in the going. You can see back there, there is Didier Taze. The margin last lap was about 7 seconds. It's about 6.5. Traffic certainly playing a role. Are they actually trying right now? Oh, we have got a hit, and that's the 46, the team car for the Morgans. That's the number 46 Morgan Dollar entry. Andy Richards, we believe, the starting driver in that car, and that has been a significant off. Now, it looks worse than it is because those styrofoam, it's bad, but those styrofoam blocks, when they get hit, they just explode apart. They take energy with them, and that's what they're supposed to do. But nonetheless, he got into that wall pretty good.
And this is, I believe, is where the incident is, down in the loop. Yes, there it is right there, James. You want to keep that tight. Thank
you saw Butch, he put his hand up to acknowledge the yellow, and I think to let Weaver know that this is a yellow flag section. At this point, we have not gone full course, so they should be able to go back to racing here, but I can't believe that we're not going to see a full course yellow. That area of the track, right at the run out, and that's a pretty dicey area to start with.
You can see the left front wheel on that car laying beside the barrier.
Well, they're still calling it only a station yellow just at that corner. And the approach pace car is ready to come out, but has not made an appearance. And there's the pace car waiting in pit lane. And now it looks like it's about to move. And they have. They have called the full course yellow here at Watkins Glen. Leitzinger out front. Welcome back to Watkins Glen. As you see lights out of the pace car, we're still under the full course yellow for the incident with the number 46 Computer Associates vet. However, that has been cleared up. We expect to go back to green very shortly. During the yellow, there were a few pit stops that unfolded, but one of the developments was the Moser. And I remember when we started the race, that car up on the jacks in pit lane during the yellow, it made its way out. Now, it is a few laps down, certainly, but it is on its way and is out running on the track at this point. So they've got an awful lot of ground to make up. It'll be interesting to see what unfolded. Before we get back to green, we quickly want to check in with Guy Hobbs. Guy, there was a real flourish of activity down there.
Yeah, there was a number of stops made. As you mentioned, Moser's back out underway, but a long way behind. James Weaver came in, took on fuel. Buddy Rice came in, took on fuel and tires. A couple of the SRP2 cars came in and took on just fuel. Also, the number 5, Celine. Remember we said it didn't sound right? Well, they had a plug wire that had come loose. They put that back on. It sounds good again, and Chris Bingham's out in that car. The 46, Andrew Richards, he's reported to be okay, but has gone to the infield medical center just for routine checkup. At 47, Rob Morgan, who was having a good battle with the 9-0 in the AGT class, they just came in and took in fuel only.
And there is I'm sorry, Greg, there is a look at that 24 car. And just in case it's not clear what we were talking about at the top of the show with that car, depending on what type of racetrack you're running on, that will determine which side of the car you fuel on. This is the first racetrack we've been to, first proper normal terrain road course this season in Grand Am, where you fuel on the right side of the car. That means the whole fuel system has to be transferred over, the whole in and out of the fuel tank has to be transferred over to the right side of the car. This team did not do that, and I would suspect someone's going to get in trouble because they didn't do their homework. And you can see just behind the window on the car just behind the window, those two silver round things, that is the fuel. That's where the fuel goes in, and those should be over on the other side of the car, which I think I saw them before. But that is the issue we're talking about. And this car now has just come out onto the racetrack and sits about 13 laps behind, so they've lost quite a bit of time. You can see they've got the two circles there behind the window on the right. That's where the fuel will go in on the right side of this car.
Now, one of the other cars also that made a stop during the yellow was the third place car, the Dallara Judd with Didier Taze driving, that had been sitting in the third spot. And at first blush, you'd think, okay, just topping off with a little fuel. But you noticed how far back he dropped. Well, there was another reason. They had a tire problem, and we're going to show you that in just a minute. First, here's the restart, and watch for it here. There's Leitzinger. Now, he did not stop, but look how quick. I mean, they had such a big lead. Weaver did it all. They were able to almost get back in position. But look at the fan out, and the Ferrari, what a great jump on that. Dove underneath a number of cars, including that number 34, which looks like he may be struggling just a little bit. And the Ferrari has gone to the point here. There's the 34 in trouble. He is at a crawl up the hill. Something wrong with the number 34 that was so quick earlier, the Zip Racing machine, on board with Borchardt, right behind the car that just won Le Mans. Okay, not the exact car, but the car that won, the team that won Le Mans in its rookie appearance at Les Arts. That's Kevin Buckler's Racer Group. Great story there. Borchardt, look at the fan out, 3-4 abreast, heading into the inner loop, and a lot of brake lockup.
And that 34 Porsche still just kind of crawling down the back straightaway, now just turning into the inner loop there. You can see it. So clearly problems, and that's too bad because just before the full course yellow, that car had gotten around the Ferrari to take the lead in GT class. So it looks like maybe it's
got damage.
I think it's damage on the left rear. Yes, it's a flat tire on the left rear. So, and you can see the tire completely separated. And the key now, and boy, what a long ride, more than 3 miles back to the pit lane. But what you've got, no, that you can't do that. I mean, you can do it. He's now peeled off onto the short course, and that's going to create a real safety issue when he rejoins here, because that's where he's going to rejoin. He's taking the short way around, but he's going to lose that lap. So you lose the time either way, and it creates a real safety concern when he tries to rejoin.
Meanwhile, there is Leitzinger out front and already easing away just a little bit with Weaver behind him. Now, Weaver only did fuel, so he's just trying to play the fuel game a little bit better here, stretch his windows a little bit, and has done that. So they're both on the same set of tires that they started with, and Weaver, that stops. The tires aren't going to cool off that much. And plus, he's fairly brilliant on cold tires anyway.
Brilliant is a big word, I'll tell you, but I don't disagree.
Well, thanks for both questioning me and agreeing with me in the same breath. Whoa, that's that number 48. That's the Tommy Riggins AGT car. We saw a big plume of smoke out of him earlier very briefly. He made a stop. Apparently they thought they got it fixed, but one suspects not, because that's smoking heavily, and he's going very, very slow. And unfortunately for Taze, is going to be right in front of Taze as they come out of the inner loop. The speed line giving you the current order here after 15 laps of racing. And you can see that smoke once again out of that car. Meanwhile, here's Taze, and they now have a new tire on that car, but they've got to be a little bit concerned.
Well, they came in during that yellow, and they did change tires. They had a blistered, what Kevin Doran told us was a right front tire. There it is there. You can see the blisters on the inner edge of the right front tire. I'm a little bit surprised by that. The left side tires definitely do a bit more work here at Watkins Glen, so I'm a little bit surprised that that was a right front, and maybe we just got confused on that and it was the left front. But either way, that's not what you want to see after 11 laps of green flag racing.
Not at all. Meanwhile, maybe we can get a little more information from Guy Hobbs.
Yeah, we're down to the 34 pit. Your right, left rear completely destroyed, putting a brand new left rear on, also a left front while they're at it, actually changing the right side tires too. And adding fuel, taking this opportunity, although they did take that short way back here. I don't know if they're going to get some penalty for that, but this car should be back out and underway very shortly.
Well, one wonders if it was contact or they just cut a tire down that caused that. It was an awful big pack up and fan out as they went green. Maybe they just scraped by somebody.
And I think, you know, it's a calculated risk on taking the shortcut. Generally speaking, what happens is you're not scored for that lap. You can see there the Mosler now trying to make up for lost time. Generally, you're not scored for that lap, and that's really a calculated risk because that tire has delaminated or has come apart is going to may do more damage. It may, you know, take you out of the race as a result of that. So it's a calculated risk. You take the shortcut, you lose the lap, and you keep going.
That Mosler was so fast that we're watching in qualifying, almost a second and a half over the next fastest car. But you'd think as we, well, boy, look at this right here. That is the Racer Group entry, and it is under full attack right now from the number 81. Now, that's the G&W Motorsports car of Darren Law, who's pulling double duty, or was scheduled to, and Brent Martini. That's the car that's won here the last 2 years. And boy, still trying to dive to the inside of the Racers Group car in the S's. That's a tunnel up through there. And now here comes the number 47 AGT entry coming up to join the fray. But they decided, G&W decided to also enter this Porsche to try and keep their streak alive. They've won the last 2 6-hour races here as they've been trying to unfold it. But meanwhile, look at this. That battle holding up some very quick machinery behind, including the ex-champion racing Lola Porsche, now being run by Pegasus Racing, that started dead last after an engine change and is working its way up through the pack. And boy, such is the intensity of that GT battle, Jeremy, that this vet can't get by. Thinking about it here, but he can't get into the turn sometimes as fast as these GT cars.
Well, that's the thing. These cars are very close on lap time, not far off at all. The AGT car will be definitely quicker coming out of the corners in terms of horsepower, and definitely quicker down the straightaways. But these GT cars very good in braking zones, and they can roll a lot of speed through the corners. So in terms of lap time, if the cars are being well driven and well prepared, they're going to be very, very close. You can see the AGT car climbing that hill out of the toe of the boot, definitely caught up to the Porsche as they came into the heel there. But the Porsche, no problem in terms of rolling speed through the corner and matching the speed of the AGT car.
All right, also we have a problem out on course, the 87. Now that's that Ford Norma, and look at that, a completely buckled suspension on that car on the front end of it. So they made the change to the Ford engine from the BMW, but they still are struggling a little bit with some of the chassis components. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Watkins Glen. The 6 hours of the Glen well underway. There is your leader in GTS. And Guy talked about the pit stop for them. A plug wire had come undone. They put that on, and now that car running at full song, leading in GTS, the beautiful Celine. There's the number 90 Corvette leading in the American GT category. That's Copperell, Andy Copperell, and Jim Briotti, but they put Doug Goad into that car as well with the failure of the 09 car, trying to get him some points. Goad doing a beautiful job right now, expanding his lead in American GT. There is that Celine, Chris Bingham, and because of his problems early, he's a couple of laps behind the overall race leader. Normally, that car would not be that far adrift because it is so very quick, but Bingham trying to go for his, I believe, 4th win of the season here. There's the number 90 just cresting the hill, and right behind the 90, as we look at Doug Goad, is the number 54 BMW. This is the car now that Boris said drove solo in Phoenix to the win, and it's R.J. Valentine and David Murray. Murray behind the wheel. R.J. Valentine had a pretty substantial hit in one of the practice sessions. Crew doing a great job to rebuild it, and David Murray is just simply bad fast, and he has that car now in the lead in GT, and there's the margin back to Kurt Wagner in the Ferrari.
And we did find out that the number 34 car that Spencer Pompelli was driving, the Porsche, did in fact make contact. That is what cut that left rear tire and took him out of this battle. So he is probably a lap or so down now. We will double check on scoring, but a shame that he's been taken out of this battle. But there is that new Ferrari, and straight from the Michelotto factory. And Ferrari really getting involved now in GT racing after their successes in Europe last year in the FIA GT Championship. And they've built a number of these 360 GT cars that are built specifically for racing. And they are getting more and more competitive, quicker and quicker.
Sort of Ferrari's answer to Porsche's GT3 RS program, the factory-built turnkey race car for GT. Ferrari has decided to play that game as well, which is great news for the future of GT racing. And you'll notice on the side of that Ferrari, more prominent than ever, the GP of Gerard Perregaux, the watch company, And of course, that's been sort of an associate sponsor along with Wagner for a long time. But the Girard Perregaux Watch Company has now started to produce, like their 330 SP Ferrari line of watches, a limited edition line of 360 GT watches. Only 360 will be built, and they've elected this car in this program to sort of showcase that new watch. Great watch line, and they've really upped their presence and their support of that program. This is a good story, too. This Pegasus car, major engine problems in practice and qualifying. They thought they may have to pack it up and leave, yet they were able to get the engine swapped out, and have frankly been on a bit of a tear, starting absolutely dead last and knocking on the door of top 10.
Yeah, running 12th overall right now, not able to turn the lap times that the Dyson cars are able to run. You see the Mosler there just drove by the Ferrari, and so that gives you an indication of how quick that Mosler is and how disappointed this team must be right now to have had to sit for 10 laps in the pit lane before they could get that car out on the racetrack. Clearly, you can see they've got the pace on the racetrack, as our 2 overall leaders now starting to show up in this group of cars. Butch Leitzinger with James Weaver practically tagged on to the back. And this actually might present a little opportunity for James.
Yeah, this is Bob and Weave at its best here as they're trying to fight through the lap cars. And you said it before, these guys are allowed to absolutely go at it and race. And if there's just the slightest bobble for Butch being held up in traffic, James, who I have always said, I think, is one of the most decisive, amazing drivers in traffic, he will pounce, no question. But Butch pretty strong in traffic as well. But the exit here, this, depending upon, it's a pretty good launch in that Porsche turbo. But there you see it, it's exit speed. Makes the move, gets around, puts that car down a lap. We were going to try and slide through as well, does. So no harm, no foul at this point. But more traffic still.
I think decisive is actually the perfect word to describe James Weaver and his driving style, especially when it comes to traffic. And you know what? You cannot hesitate, and that is the key. You have to make a decision. You have to say, okay, I'm going to go, and you have to go. And that is absolutely what Weaver does. And so does Butch Leitzinger. Both of these guys just tremendous sports car racers. And that's why, you know, there is not a major sports car race that takes place that usually these guys aren't on the grid and in a good car.
Yeah, and at the front, I mean, it is just that intense. And you can see Weaver, as you put it, is just absolutely glued to the rear wing of Leitzinger right now as they head down toward turn 2 and that climb up the S's. And you've made this climb before. I mean, there is not a lot of runoff in this area of track. It's the funnel up to the top of the hill, and the speeds you carry as you exit the S's heading to the end loop are massive. We are back at the Glen, and the battle at the front is getting very intense here. This is unbelievable. Weaver is now really starting to show the nose, take little inside runs, and Butch, he wants by. And of course, now Weaver made that stop a few laps in under that caution, topped off on fuel. And with a 6-hour race, do you think that far ahead, Jeremy, to a fuel strategy we want to do it? Make it 5 stops as opposed to 6, etc.
I'll tell you, if you get the opportunity and you're 10 laps in, which at this racetrack is more than 35 miles, or right about 35 miles, you know, you take the opportunity. Why not? You know, you're not going to pay a big price. You saw he didn't pay a big price because they were far enough ahead. And ooh, that hurt a little bit. They were far enough ahead in terms of track position that didn't hurt him in terms of track position. So I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. And essentially what you do is, as a team, you cover yourself in terms of fuel strategies, in terms of going up against the Doran team. So you've got the bases covered.
And you wonder here, is Leitzinger trying to stretch it a little bit to go with one last stop? And now that Weaver went in that 10 laps and topped off, he can run full song. Does Butch have to conserve a little bit?
Well,
it's kind of an interesting deal.
The thing is, in an endurance race, that first tank of fuel is always the point at which you're getting an idea what you can do in terms of fuel economy. So Pat Smith and his team will have, they will know exactly how much fuel they put in Weaver's car. Now they've got an idea what that car is doing in terms of fuel economy, and Butch will do the same thing on this first run, and that will kind of set the stage and set the tone for what the team is going to do on fuel strategy for the rest of the race.
Coming up on the Ford Norma,
Butch moves over, makes the move, and James Weaver comes through. The bumps in that braking zone there, you can really see exactly where they are because of the tire marks, the lockup, and then it disappears as they're skipping over these bumps under brake.
Yeah, there are two big bumps there, and that gets the car moving around, and that actually has probably contributed to kind of rippling the rest of the pavement in there, which sets up a nasty little chain of events. Look at James Weaver just tossing it into turn 10. I just love that. James so comfortable in these cars. Remember, this is the team that debuted this Riley and Scott back in 1995, and they have run these cars more than anyone else. They probably know them better than anyone else. And James Weaver probably more comfortable behind the wheel of Riley and Scott than anyone else.
To quote Jim Carrey, like a glove, these cars fit James Weaver. And certainly Butch Leitzinger, who for many of those years has partnered James actually in the same car, and they've really put together some tremendous runs of success as teammates in the same car, always as teammates in the same team and doing a nice job. And you can see how quickly they've displaced that Ford Norma. The laps these guys are turning are 141s and 141 and a half, and they qualified at 139. So they're pretty much at full chat. You can see Weaver ultra aggressive. I mean, dropping tires, as you said, throwing it around.
Well, you know, what's interesting about this is that right now these guys sit 17 seconds ahead of Didier Tays in the Laura Judd, and I think that is pretty significant.
One thing about their driving styles that it occurs to me is that Butch seems to carry a little more speed, smooth into the corner, and has good exit speed certainly as a result. James seems he goes to the throttle so early, and as you said, I use the term throwing it around. He loves to turn it and just gas it and just blast through the turn. A couple of slightly different driving styles, but both of them very effective, and certainly when Butch has to hustle the car, he's capable of it.
Yeah, and having said that, you know, these two have shared cars many times, and that's one issue you get into in endurance racing, is that you have multiple drivers in these cars, which means you have to make compromises in terms of setup. You can't set the car up just so one guy is happy, although many teams have done that and continue to do that. But if you're truly going to be successful and every driver is going to be able to excel and have confidence in the car, you have to have a setup that everyone's happy with and everyone can drive, and that means making compromises in terms of what you do with the setup on the race car. And these guys have shared cars many times before and have been very successful doing it.
Now we've been watching this intra-team battle for the overall lead in SRP2 as they whistle down toward the inner loop, and we got a problem here. The number 9, that's the Marcus Motorsports formal transportation BMW M3. Chase Friedman and Dobbins has pulled off and parked. Fairly terminal-looking problems there, and they're going to be on the stop. Meanwhile, Leitzinger now catching traffic, and you get a little bit of a respite here where you got some clear track, and then it goes away because you catch another group of cars that are duking it out. And as I said, we've been watching this battle in SRP, but another intra-team battle is in the SRP2 division here. These two Nissan Lolas, and a little bit of a wave there. Not sure what that signified. Borchler, whether he was signifying something to Nicholas Johnson or trying to get that Marcus Mantis to acknowledge that he was coming up behind him.
Well, I think if you're in the Marcos, you're not going to see that. You're definitely going to see the headlights in your mirrors, and that's the main reason these guys run their headlights during the day, so that the slower cars see those reflections dancing around in their mirrors, and they see those cars coming.
Final turn onto the front straight. Borchler and Johnson, 1-2 in the SRP2 category. Watch that speed line across the top. Gives you the full rundown as the race unfolds here. We're 25 laps in.
And you saw 38 there, which was the last cars, the BMW Picchio, that did not actually take the green flag, hasn't even made an appearance, which is a real shame. SRP2 car that the GW team has been developing this year, and Darren Law and Andy Lally have been driving that car, and it did not even take the green flag, and we haven't been able to chase down that story yet because there's been so much going on. But we're certainly looking forward to seeing that car in the field, but we haven't seen it all day.
You see the overall leaders coming up behind their SRP2 leaders, and the sad thing is for Law, certainly it's a problem, but for Andy Lally, he was third in points in SRP2, coming in here on the face of some very competitive runs, and Law was second. So those guys, although they hadn't had the win, they've been going to this gentleman mostly, Terry Borchler, with a couple different teammates. Still, Law and Lally, second and third respectively in the points. This is going to hurt in that they're going to open up that margin. Borchler started the season off with, 3 straight wins, and ended up winning the last race of last year as well. So 4 wins on a trot. And then the only car that has beaten them so far this year is the 7 car at Phoenix. In true dominance by this team in this program in the SRP2 category. We already talked about you've got a good package, a good car, and stellar driver line. So, bit of a ride there with Terry Borchler as he continues to lead. There is your overall race leader and his constant shadow, Butch Leitzinger and James Weaver, into the final turn at the Glen. Welcome back, and as we went to break, you saw Butch Leitzinger down into the pits. Guy Hobbs.
Yeah, Butch pulled down into the pits. I had a little trouble getting the car up on the jacks, but it is up now, changing all 4 Goodyears, and Butch is going to stay in the car, taking on a whole new load of fuel. Of course, we're 1 hour or 56 minutes into this thing, so that's going to give you an idea how long they can run on a tank of fuel. We know James, of course, stopped earlier under the yellow, but a full tank of fuel, Butch stays in, and he is back out underway.
Very quick stop, even with the problem early with the jacks. Once that crew goes to work, they've done that so many times before, and Leitzinger gets out. There are the tires that came off the car and look decidedly better than that right front on that Dallara.
Well, Sandy Heng was reminding me this morning that the Doran team last year ran on Yokohamas, and of course, this year, Grand Am, to keep costs down, has mandated a rule where essentially each class runs on a one brand of tires. So all of the SRP cars run on Goodyear tires, and the Dyson team has really only ever run on Goodyear tires, and so they will know the Goodyear tires very well, whereas the Doran team is new to the Goodyears, and that may have been a factor in that, although they have run 4 races this year on those tires, and Daytona, the 24-hour being one of them, so you would think that their experience level at this point would be pretty solid with the Goodyears. Maybe this morning, that first hit, they were trying to run a softer tire. We don't know. They certainly weren't giving up a whole lot of information.
No, not at all. And the other thing I noticed was, you pointed it out, the blisters on that tire were on the inside, which would indicate a fair amount of camber being run. And maybe, as you said, they had some camber dialed in, and then they tried a softer compound or something, and it just absolutely scorched them.
It's possible. There's so many factors that go into tire management and blistering tires, and it can be camber issues, pressure issues, downforce issues, spring issues, anti-roll bar issues. There's so many things that can play into that, and this team will do their best, and I'm sure they'll get it figured out.
Well, you mentioned downforce issues. One thing, the team, as well as the new engine here, are debuting a new wing, as I understand it, and maybe they haven't got the balance quite right. If you get start to induce a pretty bad push where the car doesn't want to turn, that can mess a set of tires up in a hurry as well. Meanwhile, there's Butch Leitzinger out from his stop, and obviously now trying to work his way back up through the pack. Weaver leads it. Tays almost 20 seconds back at this stage, and even with that stop, to give you an idea of how strong they are, Leitzinger has come out, we think, in 3rd, with Rice in 4th. Now we'll watch for timing to cycle through one time, but that gives you an idea of the situation. Meanwhile, here's the field coming out of the final turn here at the Glen and running through. There's the 34 car. You can see the damage to the back with that tire getting fixed. Not terrible. It's not like there's a lot of bodywork flailing around in that left rear corner. So that car probably running as fast as it ever was. Problem for it is it has lost a tremendous amount of time.
Well, that car now sitting in 26th overall, and it looks like about 10th or 11th in class. So, very, very costly. Right now, turning laps in the 1 minute 56 range, which compares absolutely favorably with what David Murray is doing, who is leading GT right now in that BMW M3.
Yeah, he's having a great run. There's the damage to the 34 cars from contact, but just getting off course here a little bit can cause you a fairly fraught moment. Here's a look at what happened here to the number 52. That's the kudzu.
Well, there's some smoke coming out of the back of that car. And I wonder, I don't think, that was not caused by the smoke, I'll tell you that. That was caused by a very quick closing rate and possibly a little front arrow push from the car that he was catching, so that car now in the pit lane.
That was a nice save, but he was very fortunate not to hook up, shoot across the track, and get into that car parked over there. And there's the problem. There's a lot of oil, some of it coming out of the drain plug where it should, some of it not where it should.
Well, I think that's the smoke we were seeing, was something out of the gearbox, something in the back of the car, but I don't think that had anything to do with the off-track excursion. But it's sometimes hard to know sitting in the booth and easy to jump to conclusions.
That's really your job, though.
To jump to conclusions.
When you don't know. There's a look at the pit lane, and we have a full course yellow. And I almost wonder if it may not have been because of how close he got to that car, and they decided to clean the track up. Meanwhile, let's check in with Sandy Yang.
Right now, I'm with Andy Lally, and we are in the garage. This is frustration for you and the 07 team.
Yeah, I feel most sorry for the guys. They're thrashing on the car real hard. They've been doing real good, and my teammate Darren, who's in the points here, the USI guys in momentum, you know, we're all working hard to try to get this back together, and I think they'll get it back on there, and we'll get out there and show them what the PKO's about.
What happened? It looked like you had it together this morning, and then
the car's been running fine all weekend. We've been fast, we've been keeping on pace, and it's just one of those weird deals. You know, we can't really explain what's going on right now. The guys are going through every nut and bolt in the car, and you know, just try to get on out there.
Okay, let's go over to Guy Haas.
In time for Chris Dyson to pull out of pit lane. James Weaver came in as soon as that yellow came out, took advantage of that, changed all 4 tires. Let's see if we can get a quick word here with James, who looks fairly tired. James, a good little run there, great little race going on with Butch, but you took advantage of that first yellow and got some fuel.
Yeah, Butch is flying the rotten so-and-so, really making me work for it.
How are your tyres holding up? We know that Delara Judd had some blistering problems on their Goodyears, but yours seem to be okay.
Yeah, we stopped, filled up with fuel after we'd used over half a tank, went back out and I could run as fast as Butch, so we've got absolutely no degradation at all. The tyres are mint.
Having fun out there?
Settle down, I'm always having fun.
He's always having fun, settle down. Behave, that's James Weaver, just got out of the car, he's going to take a glass of water, and Chris Dyson has taken over the driving.
What are you thinking, Guy?
Yeah.
What kind of question is that to ask? Are you having fun? Settle down, man.
Mr. Weaver is nothing but fun when he gets behind the wheel of a race car. He is truly one of the real characters in the pit lane, and lucky to have him, certainly. Full course yellow continues here as they're just removing some cars from the side of the track here at the Glen. Welcome back to Watkins Glen. Want to bring you up to speed. There was some developments that have occurred here. Full course yellow and the restart. Everybody got through it clean. It was, again, just another big fan out down on that first turn, but everybody snuck through. Now, there were some driver changes during the yellow and a couple of pit stops. One of them, Ralph Kellner's got on board the number 8, the leader in the SRP2 division, and his progress up through the pack, through the S's, was spectacular. Problems, though, for the number 87 Cezio Florida Racing Team Ford Norma. Driver Patrice Roussel brings the car down, and you'd think, okay, standard stop. Not the case. He steps out, and nobody was going to get back in. The problem's apparently terminal, or at least enough to take him back behind the wall for a very, very long repair. It looks like their day might well be done. Problems for the number 90 AGT vet. So competitive there. Huge plumes of smoke out of that car. The number 16 in the hands of young Chris Dyson. Quick loop going through the inner loop section of track, trying to work through some traffic, just got caught out. Meanwhile, shortly after that, he turned the car over to James Weaver, and then into the pits came the race leader, Butch Leitzinger, made the stop, and they went for the driver's change here as well. So that is Rob Dyson that got behind the wheel of the number 20 machine. A very quick stop for that team. As you would expect, now you're up to speed. There is Rob Dyson, who continues to lead right now. And, of course, after the stop, that's going to be margined down just a little bit at this stage. So he continues to lead right now.
Well, what's interesting right now is that with all of the SRP cars stopping, the SRP2 car, the number 8 of Rand Racing, that car is on the lead lap, sitting 3rd overall, 46 seconds behind Rob Dyson. So great performance there. That is the car that Kalleners was driving. He got in, and he is driving that car. There is Rob Dyson, the number 20 car. And he is the leader, but James Weaver sits in 2nd right now, but pretty impressive, that SRP2 car in 3rd overall.
Yeah, and the team car running in 4th overall. Let's get down to the pit lane and Guy Hobbs.
Yeah, you mentioned Butch has stepped out of the car, having qualified it on the pole, and had a great opening salvo there with James Weaver. The car's obviously running fine there, Butch.
Actually, not really. Well, it's running fine, but we've had a problem with some water, I think from the drink bottle, leaking down by the pedals. So for the last, really like the last third of the first stint and then the entire second stint, my feet were all wet and kept slipping off the pedals, so I was having to back up the braking points quite a bit. So we slowed down a little bit. We yanked it out, and hopefully it won't be a problem anymore. They're going to give a good wipe down, so hopefully that won't be a problem the rest of the race.
Now, you guys have had a problem down there before, but it was the power steering fluid last time, but not this time.
Yeah, that was my first thought, the power steering again, and I get really tired of my foot slipping off the brake pedal each time I'm trying to use it. So I don't think it's going to be a chronic problem like that. Hopefully, we chucked the water bottle out of the car, so there shouldn't be a problem.
All right, Butch, we'll keep a close eye on that. And as you mentioned, Rob Dyson, the birthday boy, is in the car right now.
Well, Jeremy, obviously he's working his way back up to speed. Rob not driving as much as he used to. How long do you think it's going to take him to find the pace here?
Well, he'll chip his way down. Right now he's in the 1:50 range, which is, 8-9 seconds slower than what Butch was doing, but he'll chip that down, no question about it. But in the meantime, here, James Weaver is coming. There is no question about that. So Weaver is right up to speed. He's in the 1:42 range. You just got a quick glimpse of him there. There is Maribaldi in the Dallara Judd in the toe of the boot. This car now sitting a lap down, though, to the overall race lead. So what he has to do is he has to tag onto the back of James Weaver and catch Rob Dyson, which I think he will, and he'll get back on the lead lap.
And the car is certainly capable of it. Didier Tage, right before he turned over to young Freddie Lienhardt Jr., turned the quickest lap of the race in SRP2, a 140 flat, essentially. So that's not too far off qualifying pole speed, let alone where they qualified at. And certainly Mario Baldi is an awfully gifted driver, and he's going to be giving these guys, Weaver and certainly Dyson, I think, a run for their money.
I think no question about it. I mean, his last lap was down in the 141. 141.1 was his last lap. Weaver just did a 44.1, and Baldi just did a 43.9, and that is traffic. But right now, these guys sitting about 29 seconds behind Rob Dyson, our overall leader.
As you mentioned, the number 27 down a lap, so they're going to need a little bit of help here. They have to run quick, get back on that lead lap, and then certainly hope for a yellow and hope for some pit sequencing to sort of fall their way, I would think, just a little bit. Here's the leader in the SRP2 division, the number 8 machine in the hands of Ralph Kellners. And, hey, that's what the drivers have to deal with on the visors, and that's what you're getting on the onboard shot. A little bit of nature at work here, but nonetheless, Kellners, as you pointed out, Jeremy, absolutely flying in the car, in the sister car, the number 7 entry with him. But Kellners has now set fast lap in this class at a 145.9. And believe me, folks, that is absolutely flying. I mean, the pole by Borchler was a 145.3, so Kellners about a half second off pole and in race trim. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, he's definitely hustling this car around. No question about it. As I said before, up to 3rd overall. And their teammates are sitting 4th overall, so that is a great performance by that Rand team.
On the GTS division, it's this car, number 5, leading and also quick as Chris Bingham, turned a 152.066. Now they qualified at a 149 flat, but nonetheless they're struggling. They had a little engine problem with a spark plug. It may not be completely cured. And now Rodney Mall, the co-driver with the K&N sponsorship, has climbed aboard that machine as well. Fairly uncontested at this spot. They're in 11th place overall, but the GTS contender is a little thin on the ground here, and he's pretty much got this racetrack to himself in terms of the class.
There is no question about that. But nevertheless, a 6-hour race is a 6-hour race, and the car has to be well prepared and well driven to get to the end, and that is the key.
Well, the Park Place Saline team is certainly that. I mean, they've won 3 races already this year, and the team took Bingham to the championship last year, so they're certainly awfully capable. There's no question of that. There is the number 47 entry. That's the American GT, the AGT, as they say, class leader right now. And that car having a very good run. The father and son duo of Morgan and Morgan, Charles Morgan, the dad, Rob, the son, and the Computer Associates entry, that has been very quick. And Rob Morgan has fast lap in that class at a 1:52.5, and you compare that to where they qualified. They had a 1:49.9 in qualifying, so they're within a couple seconds of qualifying trim and doing a nice job as well. And this has got to be very special for a father and son to be racing like this and doing it very well. Last people I could think of were perhaps the Lightsingers.
Yes, and although these guys, even though they have fastest race lap, they're sitting 2nd overall in their class, and that's probably not where they want to be, a couple laps down right now. And speaking of being laps down,
this one, number 24, of course, we watched the first, 10 laps or so unfold while it was up on the jacks in the pits. But since it's taken to the track, it is flying. A 153.3 by João Barbosa. Now, keep in mind, this car did qualify on the GT pole at a 151.8. was very quick, almost a second clear of the field in qualifying, and now is running some very fast laps. Problem is, it started 10 laps back and is really going to be struggling here. It's going to maybe be able to make up, what, 1 or 2 laps clear, maybe with some yellow help, but they're in for a long day of just testing. But up front, it continues to be the number 20 Tetford Norcold Dyson racing machine. And team owner Rob Dyson at the helm right now, leading away at his favorite track, Glen. Welcome back once again, everybody. Time to bring you up to speed. The number 27 Doran entry problems came into the pits and they went to work on it. You see him changing the wicker bill, but the problems were more intensive than that. You can see they also have the rear body work off. And Rob Dyson, Jeremy, came in and it was only 13 laps into his stint.
And he should be able to do almost double that, maybe 24, 25, 26 laps. And Elliott Forbes Robinson got in the car, but after they changed the tires, they pulled the bodywork off. They've got some problems with that car. Then the 27 car, they decided, let's roll it behind the wall, and they needed to do some work on that. There was the bodywork going back on, and EFR went back out, but was still not happy with that car.
Yeah, they were concerned. Meanwhile, the number 5, Celine, got it all wrong, leading in GTS. And we understand that that may be a little bit deeper than just a driver problem there. There may be some mechanical problems with that car. So now you're up to speed. Let's get more up to speed. Sandy?
Well, I'm right now with the 27 team. Kevin Doran, actually, look inside here. You can see what's happening. They have a brand new Judd engine that they are working with. Those are the injectors they've been cleaning out right there to the side, putting those back in. An injection problem. Mauro Baldi sitting in the cockpit talking with Freddie Lienhart Jr. about what the car is doing and how it's handling, but definitely a very difficult setback for Kevin Doran. Let's go to Guy Hobbs. Guy?
Thanks, Andy. Just quickly on the 5 car, we believe that's a gearbox problem. Check on that for you. Right now, what you're seeing is the crew working on the 20 car in the footwell area. As you mentioned, Rob Dyson only did about 13 laps, found the car undrivable. Elliot, they put you in because you're the old man and they know you can drive anything, but obviously undrivable for you too. You got some fluids leaking.
The car actually has the fluids leaking, but you know, I am old. But anyway, we don't know what it is exactly. The brake pedals seem very soft. We're all out of fluids in the clutch and brake, and now the steering is getting notchy, like we're losing the fluids. I don't know what's going on.
A lot of fluids being lost everywhere. Very hard to drive too without power steering here, especially in this heat.
Well, it's just because it's notchy right now. But the hardest thing about it is you can't push the brake hard, because if you do, your foot flies off it and hits the bulkhead.
All right, well, we don't want that happening, so they're going to work on this and hopefully get the EFR back out there.
Without leaking fluids, we might add. There's the 5 car behind the barrier, so they are working feverishly on that. Again, suspected gearbox problems was the update from Guy Hobbs. So attrition starting to play a little bit of a role here, certainly with some of the front runners at this point. So as we take a look at the speed strip, and it's showing you that this car continues to lead overall. James Weaver continues to throw in some very quick laps. We even had him down on the 139s at one point, Jeremy.
Yeah, he did a 139.9, and he's not really slackened that pace a whole lot. 1 minute 40.7 on the last lap for James Weaver. And we understand Chris Dyson will probably get back in that car, and I think that's probably the right thing to do with the heat today, to do the frequent driver changes, try and keep everyone fresh. But these guys have been handed a little bit of a break with the team car running into problems, and of course with the Doran car running into those problems with the fuel injection.
Now, one of the teams and cars that's been benefiting from that is the car right in front that Weaver's closing in on, the number 8 entry. That car not only leading now in SRP2, but running 2nd overall. Yes, they've had some help from yellows and just how those have fallen and the like, but they've also had some absolutely scintillating drives, first from Borchler, then from Kellners, and now Anthony Lazaro back with the team after missing a couple races due to an IRL-induced back injury. And right as Weaver about to put the lap on him, Weaver ducks down into the pits, so that saves the number 8 car from going down a lap. That's huge. That's the kind of luck they've been having. But meanwhile, here comes James Weaver. You see, he puts the radio connect up on his helmet. There's a Velcro strip there. Comes in, belt's already undone, and James Weaver is going to be stepping out of that car and does so very quickly. Chris Dyson hops behind the wheel. James does an about face and starts helping buckle him in, get all the drinks bottles, radios hooked up, crew going after tires and fuel. And this just looks like the regimen that you've come to expect, Jeremy, from the Dyson Racing team.
Yeah, this all looks quite normal. That was about a 25-lap run for James Weaver, and his 2nd stint in the car. Chris Dyson did have one brief spin in his stint was lucky not to bury the car in the gravel because he was right on the edge of the gravel trap. But he is now making his way out of the pit lane, and it's nice for him to know he's got a comfortable lead, about a lap and a half up on that number 8 car that James Weaver was just about to put a lap on.
Yeah, he's going to have some serious room, and again, that tells you the pace that Weaver was driving at to almost have the field lap by the time he ducked in. So now Chris Dyson back out, got to be a little careful, even on a very warm day like this. Careful about those tires until they come up to full race temp. And believe me, it's warm out there, about 90 degrees. The humidity has got to be probably a little higher than that even. And it's taking their toll on drivers. You alluded to the frequent drivers changes just to keep everybody fresh. Good thing that as Chris Dyson now continues on track. And Guy Hobbs, what's going on down the pit lane?
Yeah, Chris Bingham's just climbed out of the car. Problems with the gearbox on the Celine.
Yeah, the co-driver Rodney just got out of the car. I was getting back in to make a scheduled stop, and he was reporting some gearbox problems. 5th and 6th gear having problems shifting. We're not sure exactly what's going on right now. We're going to change the gear stack and try to get back out.
That's a tough break because, of course, this weekend, Chris was hoping to pad his points lead in the GTS division without Millman and Byrne here this weekend, but obviously going to work on the car and try and get back out.
Right, yeah, we'll see what we can do.
All right, hot days down here in pit lane for the Celine number 5.
I should think, and there's a good look at the car as they continue to work on it. Now, they still lead. They had a pretty good margin built up in the class, so they lead, and if they can get the car fixed and back out, they're still in with a shout, not only at a decent finish here, but with a shot potentially still at the win. Meanwhile, let's go back down to Sandy Hang.
We're in the garage right now. 10 cars are in the garage. The 48 here, 2 engines this weekend. Blew another one. Behind us, the 29 car. They have had a miss they're dealing with. Of course, the PKO over there, still going through that car, wire by wire because of the electrical problem. Swing around. Kerry hit us here. Come over here, Kerry. Show us what happened to the rear end.
Well, this is the main drive plan, Sandy, and what happened was as we were trying to pull out, we have this 14-inch wide Goodyear rubber that was hot. It was on concrete, and when the drive shaft twisted to start to turn the rear end, it just cleaned the gears right off.
The metal just totally wasted.
Broke right out, yeah.
Oh, Kerry out of the race, too. We're going to show this car right beside you, Kerry. This is the 01 Porsche gearbox in that car. We've also got another couple AGT cars here, one with an engine problem, another with a gearbox problem. It's just been a tough day to see so many of these cars in the garage, guys.
Well, I mean, that's the nuance of endurance racing, isn't it? And on a very hot day like this.
Well, that's why Kevin Doran's team and the Dyson team are both working on their cars. They know endurance racing. They know the reality, and if they can fix those cars and get them back out, they'll get some points.
They'll get some points, and here's a look behind the wall, the cars that are out of the race, or at least working on the cars behind the wall. And the Roussel Cezia now Norma, and just a look at the different categories of cars, a number of them. There you see Oyser, Jacobson, Orgy. That's that multicolored Marcos Mantis that's having some problems. A couple more of the vets in the American GT category. And one, it's just a factor of endurance racing and racing for such a long time. But on top of it, it is so warm today, and that certainly takes its toll. And of course, you add to this group, currently behind the wall, although they're still hoping to get it back out onto the track, is the number 5 Celine that Chris Bingham just got out of as well. As we ride on board now with Anthony Lazar. Great to have him back after that IRL injury. And he missed a couple of races with this team, and he is back, and he is hooked up and running very nicely. But there is Chris Dyson, the number 16 Thetford Norcold entry from Dyson Racing, coming up and going around the Racers Group Porsche in GT. Welcome back to Watkins Glen, a fairly significant development. The number 27, Doran Lista, Delara Judd struggling, was behind the wall. Lots of work unfolding on that car, as Sandy documented. Mauro Baldi brings it out from behind the wall, back onto the racetrack. Yes, a number of laps down, but back in the race, and clearly they're out of the hunt for the win, certainly, but some points to be had. Remember, Didier Taze came in leading in the points. Look at the smoke coming from the back. Now they cleaned up an awful lot of those injectors, and maybe injector cleaner and the like that is just burning through the engine. We'll keep an eye on that. But for Didier Taze in particular, this is very important, as well as Freddie Lienard. Any points you can accrue, you got to get out there and go after. And certainly if they are serious about developing and working with this 5-liter Judd engine, you want to keep it running and see what unfolds now that they've made the fix. Now there's more of that smoke, and there's something actually dripping off the back. What do you think?
That looks bad. I don't like the look of that. I mean, there's It's a lot of fluid, and you would think if there was something that was going to burn off, it's going to do it, you know, within about 30 seconds. So, so we will see. I mean, anytime you do a job like that, I mean, they essentially replaced all the fuel injectors, which means the fuel rails come on and off, and there's a lot of stuff that you've got to take on and off that car. That's you know, it just means there's a lot that can go wrong, and especially when you're doing it in a hurry.
We'll keep an eye on it and see if that smoke continues. Yeah, there it is, a little puff, smaller. Maybe a good sign. There's certainly not a lot, anywhere near as much fluid that looks to be dripping down onto the track, but you've got to give tremendous kudos to the Doran crew for doing the work. As we said, it's pretty miserable out there today in terms of temperature, and they went after it, did whatever they could, got the car back out, and I'm sure Didier certainly are appreciating it, but he's heading right back into the pits. So I don't know whether that was the plan, to go out, do an outlap, come in and check it, or whether he has sensed that there is still some fairly significant problem with that. I overheard him at one point during a break where he was chatting with the crew, and we just overheard him over Sandy's microjet to be open, and he was talking about there's no power at all. So that's what they were going after, those injectors. Meanwhile, up front continues to be the number 16, leading comfortably at this stage, as the number 27 is in the pits, Chris Dyson, lapping in the comfortable 144, 145 range. Knows he's got a lot of room. The back comes off, and that gentleman right there is Kevin Doran, who is just an absolute magician. And of course, he spent a lot of time with the legendary Holbert Racing team as the crew chief for that, and took that team to a number of wins. And he really is very special, and now has his own team program together, and also a chassis builder. He's in fact been approved as a builder on one of the new Daytona prototype chassis. So Kevin Doran does it all. So we're watching here, and meanwhile, we're going to take a look at our overall top 10. That's Chris Dyson leading overall, and certainly leading in the SRP division in the Dyson Racing, Riley and Scott Ford. And we're going to hop on board now with the second overall. There's Anthony Lazzaro behind the wheel of the number 8. That's the Nissan Lola from Rand Racing. Second overall and leading in the SRP2 division. So very, very stellar run for them. And again, they were just about to lose that lap and go down a lap, but were able to stay on the lead lap with the stop and the driver change. Now here comes Mauro Baldi, so they took a look and they send him right back out again. So the ongoing battle just to keep this car in the race and at work goes on, Jeremy, but I would think we as well as the team itself are going to be paying awfully close attention to that. Here's third place overall, and this is the number 6 Miracle Motorsports, Riley and Scott Ford. They've now turned it back over to unquestionably the team's fastest driver, Buddy Rice, and Buddy's been throwing in some fairly decent laps as well, and they sit third overall, second in the SRP2 division at this stage.
And they certainly have had a solid run. James Gouet had a couple of stints in the car, did a very solid job. James, not a ton of experience, and Buddy, of course, has spent most of his time in open wheel cars as well. There is fourth place overall. Bill Rand on board that car. They sit second in class right now, and fourth place overall, and that certainly adds to the stellar run that Rand Racing is having with their 2 cars sitting second overall and fourth overall, first and second in class right now.
And then essentially behind them in the overall order and right behind them in the SRP2 order is the Archangel Motorsports entry, a very similar car, one of the Nissan Lolas, just a different team, and of course a little different approach to it. Bill Rand, owner as well as driver of this team, and has just been a remarkable find in terms of the ownership program and what it's done for the SRP2 class. There's the number 22 entry, and they continue to run nicely in the top 5 now, third in class, 5th overall. Howard Katz, David Sternberg, and Brett Arsenault in the Altiger CTI Communications Nissan Lola for Archangel Motorsport Services. Here's a look at the overall top 5. We're going to step away for just a minute. When we come back, we'll make sure you're up to date with 6 through 10. Welcome back to Watkins Glen as we have reached the halfway point in this awesome Glen 6 hours. There is the car that's currently running 6th overall, leading in the GT division, the new Ferrari of Bill Oberlin and Court Wagner, and the Gerard Perregaux sponsored machine doing a superlative job right now. Wagner behind the wheel. That car leads in the GT division and fairly comfortably at this point. They've had a very absolute trouble-free run and are looking very, very strong at this point. Now you see the SRP2 leader right behind them. And then behind them, here comes the number 90 car. That's the leader in the AGT division. And Guy, earlier we saw, as we watch Andy Copperell heading down into the toe of the boot, Guy Hobbs, we saw that car, a lot of smoke earlier. And how's that car working?
Yeah, they've had problems with the number 90. They've had problems with the engine overheating. This is the first problem, which has led to the cockpit overheating. And they've also lost their power steering. So it's been a very hard workout for the drivers. So what they've done is they've shortened their stints because they can't go out and stay out for very long. A very busy track, particularly in this oppressive heat we have here today. So they are shortening their stints. So of course now they're making a lot more pit stops, and that's what's slowing them down.
It's slowing them down, and also their lap times are a little bit off. And that car right behind, there it is, the black number 47. That's the Computer Associates bet of the father and son, Charles and Rob Morgan team. And they are closing in, and they are closing in by the tune of, what, 2 to 3 seconds a lap on some laps. And that's how close the battle in AGT is.
Well, on the last lap, it was 6 seconds, and on the lap that we just completed, it was 5 seconds. So that gap now coming down. That's the race for 10th overall, but more importantly, that is the overall for AGT. And so the 47 car looks like in a lap or two, it's going to be able to take that position.
That's an interesting story. This car, the number 47, it's the debut of this car. Earlier in the season, the Morgans fielded the car. Rob did some driving with a couple of other drivers in the car. It was the 47 entry, or the 46 entry. This is the first time this car has debuted, and boy, what an awesome opening flourish for it here, as Rob Morgan having a very strong run in this car at this stage. Now, we want to show you the car now as we move back into our order. That is right behind in the run order in the GT division. It sits 7th overall, and it too is a car. This is its first run this year. That's the G&W Motorsports number 81, and the drivers are Brent Martini and Darren Law. This car was fielded. It hadn't run at all this year, but it won the last 2 races here. G&W had won the last 2 6 hours here at the Glen in the GT division, and they decided to dust off the car that they'd had some success with last year, bring it back, and see if they could three-peat. Brent Martini behind the wheel right now. And at this stage, Jeremy, they sit 2nd in class, 7th overall, but they're a ways behind that Ferrari.
Well, that's true, but we're only halfway through a 6-hour race, and a lot can happen in 3 hours. Porsches are renowned for their reliability, no question about that. These guys have done a solid job. Both drivers doing a very good job. So I think these guys are well placed. I wouldn't worry. I mean, yeah, they're a lap or 2 down right now, but as I said, I wouldn't worry about it. There's the Ferrari just in the background there, on its way to put another lap on them. Only a couple of seconds behind, but I think they're well placed.
Way to diss me completely.
Sorry.
We move to the 64 car. Now, that car runs 9th right now. We're jumping around a little bit, but this is a great story. It's 9th, and it has made the biggest jump from starting position to current run position. Now in the hands of Pegasus Racing. It used to run for Champion Motorsports, and the driver, Julian Calvel, right now doing a nice job. And really, that car, this is the best it has run since they brought it off the hauler here. It was just fraught with problems as Anthony Lazzaro comes up behind him in the SRP2 leading machine. And this is, I mean, they did a massive engine change. They weren't sure they were going to even be able to race, and yet they were able to get it. And since they started the engine up this morning, Jeremy, that thing has ran absolutely flawlessly. And as a result, finds himself well up now, and in fact, in the top 10. A great effort from what started to be a very problematic weekend. Welcome back to Watkins Glen, the 6 hours of the Glen, part of the Sports Car Grand Prix weekend, and the 5th stop of the Rolex Sports Car Series unfolding here at Watkins Glen, past the halfway point. I'm Greg Kramer with Jeremy Dale, Guy Hobbs, and Sandy Heng down in the pits, and you're looking at the leader right now, and it is Chris Dyson behind the wheel of the number 16 machine, and he is continuing to throw in some fairly comfortable laps, enough to continue to expand the margin. 2 of the main competitors he has, of course, are struggling at this point. One of them, his own team member, the number 20 machine, and that car is behind the wall at this point and parked, and don't know if that's even going to be able to come back out with those problems with fluid. The other one is with the number 27 machine, and Sandy Heng, those problems continue.
Well, don't forget this is the team that won Daytona. They are just not willing to quit. At this point, Kevin Doran must have his best of fingers, no gloves. He's been working on this again. He pulled all of the spark plugs out, those ignition coils, switched those all out. Now they're working around the other side of the engine. They simply do not have the power they think they need with this Judd. This is a new engine, as we mentioned before, but they're not willing to quit. Still working on it. You see, he's in there himself getting at that next spark plug.
Oh, and we've got a huge development here. This is the number 66 Racers Group Porsche that had fought its way up to third in class. Of course, hot on the heels of a win at Le Mans in the GT division. And they came here, struggled a little bit in qualifying, and it has gone from bad to worse after a pretty decent run. John Morton driving the car right now, a very savvy veteran. Probably in a situation like this, Jeremy, not bad to have a veteran of Morton's experience behind the wheel.
Well, not at all, and it's unfortunate, too, because not only were they third in class, but they were only about 25 seconds behind the second-place car, the number 81 Porsche. So John also elects to take the shortcut, and the team obviously will know that he is on the way. They get the tires out, they get the fuel ready. Hopefully John will get it back without any major damage, and he will be able to rejoin. But that is a bad break for these guys, no question about it.
Well, the crew readying, Morton slowing way down, guy. It's going to be a long time before that car gets there. Now he's able to accelerate. He was waiting for some traffic, but Guy Hobbs, that left rear corner is going to be a mess when it gets to you.
Yes, it certainly is. We was just getting ready to talk to Kevin, and actually he pointed out car 14 spinning in turn 1. He thought it was in front of the 66. He said, oh, no, okay, we're okay. And then right after he said, oh, we're okay, that's when the radio came on, and they told him they got the problem with the left rear. This is the 14 coming in after its spin. We're waiting for the 66 to make its way down pit lane. The crew is ready to go. Obviously, we're going to get ready to talk to Kevin about the great result for him winning the Le Mans 24 hours and, of course, the Daytona 24 hours, and this now the second longest race of the year, the 6 hours, running third in class at the moment. John Morton behind the wheel, and we're waiting for that 66 to get here. So you can see the 14 car also making a stop after looping it in turn 1. I was just talking to Kevin. Greg, you were curious about his qualifying run. Kevin Buckler himself didn't feel very well at the end of Le Mans and got even more sick on the plane on the way back over. And he really just wasn't feeling well. That's why he didn't qualify as well as he had hoped. Here you see the left rear. You can see the damage there. Just to my right, James Weaver pulls out of the pit lane too, keeping the 16 up front. Quite a bit of damage to the left wheel arch, but no damage to the brake or the hub there. John Morton staying in the car, and obviously they're taking this opportunity to add fuel. The Racers Group 66 getting ready to head back out.
Thanks very much, Guy. And we have a replay that's unfolding right now, and you can see it. I mean, he had a couple of big moments, and then it just came right off the rim.
Well, that is when you want a John Morton in your race car, right there. You know, a guy that has been racing for over 30 years and plenty of endurance racing experience, and the tire lets go at the top of the S's through that long right-hander, and John just calmly, corrects it, keeps it to the right as the tire lets go, shreds the bodywork a little bit, and gets it back to the pit lane. And yes, they've lost some time, but they're still solidly in this race.
Be interesting to see just exactly how they come out here, because now David Murray's back behind the wheel of that number 54 BMW, and Murray is absolutely flying out there right now. Meanwhile, there's the tire. You would have to imagine cut on some debris or something over in that section of track. And now Morton continues. They didn't do a driver's change. They just left him in the car, and he is going to head back out. Part of it probably to just see exactly what, if there was any other damage to the car, he could be able to sense that out pretty quickly. And then if it's fine, let him just set sail. So surviving a big one.
Yeah, no question. They did catch a little bit of a break with that. You can see minor damage there, but nothing too major. John was able to get the car back. They will have taken a bit of a penalty for the shortcut, but that's no problem, just part of doing business here in a long-distance race.
Well, it's certainly better to take the penalty for the shortcut than to go out and maybe end up having a big chunk of rubber just rip through and destroy the suspension, or, as Guy pointed out, the caliper, the stub axle, etc. back there. So wise thinking by the wily veteran, and he is back and underway, and up front, James Weaver now in control.
One of the big issues this weekend for the 6 hours at the Glen is going to be the heat that we're feeling. Intense sunshine bearing down on the track and very little shade and very, very high temperatures. As you can see, over 100 degrees right now, and the track temperatures at about 120 degrees. One of the problems that caused for the team is keeping the engines cool with their radiator systems and, of course, with their ducting systems. Some of the teams have reported problems with the overheating of the oil and foaming. So some of the teams have actually detuned the motor a little bit to make sure it lasts the entire 6 hours of the Glen. But not only is it the motor that counts, it's the driver that counts. And we spoke to a lot of the drivers from all sorts of different classes, from the closed cockpit to the open cockpit, to see how they will deal with the heat.
when we do the driver changes in the 6-hour races like this, we don't get the luxury of any cooling devices. And so we're just going to have to keep a lot of fluids in our body and, you know, hope for the best.
We actually wear a cool suit on our team. And I'll tell you what, with the heat here this weekend, mid-80s, humidity, without that cool suit, it'd be unbearable.
We've got, with the RAN racing team, we've got 3 drivers per car, so that's probably going to help us the most, I would guess.
Well, you got to get fresh air in and cool air in, and you've got to get that air out. Otherwise, it pressurizes the car, and it just sits there and it's still stagnant. You kind of fool yourself putting air in the car if it doesn't get out.
Usual job of hydrate yourself very well throughout the day before the race, and also up until about an hour and a half before you get in the car, keep drinking and drinking and drinking.
Not much we can do. We have an open cockpit car, and you get good air circulation. You know, you sweat anyway. I mean, on a driver standpoint, you know, it's not much difference.
So we know how the drivers are going to handle the heat situation, but what about the crew? They're out on that pit lane for 6 hours in completely unshaded territory. Well, they're going to try and find some shade, and of course, they'll be digging into the cooler and drinking lots of this.
As will, I would think, our intrepid pit reporters down in a very hot pit lane. Welcome back, everybody, as the 6 hours of the Glen continues here at Watkins Glen International. And Guy absolutely called it, talking about the heat. It is very hot today. Humidity is way up there as well. Sun has been there, been away, been there, but it has always been hot. And 11 cars officially parked right now, a few more getting work behind the wall. So attrition has certainly played its role here in a 6-hour endurance race at this stage. Here's your leader, James Weaver, and that's one of the few cars that has had a fairly just unproblematic run. Here's our race summary right now, Jeremy. We've had 2 different leaders officially, 3 lead changes. We've had 3 cautions for a total of 8 laps. The average speed still up there at 105.59 miles an hour, and 25 cars running, some of them on and off, but nonetheless, some of them are definitely running. And you can see right behind James Weaver is Buddy Rice, who is hooked up and going and trying to get a lap back if he can. Pretty tough duty when you're chasing James Weaver.
Yeah, Buddy right now sitting 4 laps down to James Weaver and running 3rd overall, but doing a very solid job. Very, very good race for that team and for this team as well. The number 8 car that is running 2nd overall. There is Buddy Rice climbing the hill with a car going very slowly up the hill, which is not what you want to see when you're climbing that hill, because it gets blind at the crest there, especially if you're sitting in one of these prototypes as low as these guys sit.
That's the Hamilton Safe Camaro of Bupp and Davis, and they've had a fairly fraught day. Had some real slow problems out there. They've had a couple of offs and the like, and it looks like they're struggling still. Here's this is now, actually Lazaro was in the car, but it is now Terry Borchler behind the wheel of the number 8 RAN Racing Nissan Lola. He's the guy that put it on pole, and they are flying, and they sit 2nd overall, as well as leading in the SRP2 division. Is absolutely stellar run for this car, and frankly, they've been getting some very fast lap times out of this car.
I think that, as you heard in Guy Hobbs' feature about the heat there, these guys in a 6-hour race are running with 3 drivers, and that is, you know, that is, I guess you could say, quite conservative. I mean, often at Sebring in the 12-hour, you'll see teams that go with 2 drivers in a 12-hour race. So to use 3 drivers in a 6-hour race is pretty generous on the drivers, but it also allows them to push really hard. This is only Terry's 2nd stint in this car, and what it's meant is that each guy that's been in it, Borcheller, Kelleners, and of course Lazaro, have all been able to run very, very quickly, very aggressively, and they don't have to worry about getting out of the car and then getting straight back in.
Well, one of the things that the physiotherapists that a lot of the teams employ now and bring along with them say is it's much easier to recover after 2 stints in the car than it is 3, and if it's hot, 1 to 2 even. And so having 3 drivers in a short race, the drivers put in 1 or maybe 2 shorter stints, get out, and they can get fresher in a hurry. Now there's the number 14 machine. That is number 14, and having themselves a bit of a problem here as well. That car is running actually in the GTS division here, and got it wrong, in the inner loop.
And that was in the braking zone coming into the inner loop. That car is the leader in GTS, although ways down in the overall, 17th in the overall, and so he is rolling again. I don't think that car made contact with the barrier, but it certainly did bounce up over the curbing there on the entry of the inner loop.
That's the Merzon Soriano Wilson machine as it gathers it up. Meanwhile, James Weaver out front, continuing to sail away here at the Glen. Welcome back to Watkins Glen International, part of the Sports Car Grand Prix weekend, the 6 hours of the Glen. And the image you see is one over the last 8 years, as we talked about at the very top of the show, that was very, very familiar. One of the Doran cars of whatever gender, I guess, at that time versus one of the Dyson cars. And over those 8 years, we've seen this so many times, racing head-to-head, going for the lead. Not so today, unfortunately, with the problems of the number 27 car. It's the better part of 30 laps down. And we talked about that absolutely great rivalry coming in here, Jeremy. And while obviously the Doran team has stayed after it, they've made changes. The car now running, frankly, quite well. It looks like maybe the tilt in that rivalry has just nudged over to Dyson.
Well, no question about it, as James Weaver forces a BMW. I won't say forces, but maybe intimidates.
Spooked him a little.
Spooks a BMW off the racetrack. But you're right. I mean, it's been a great rivalry, and the Doran team has not given up. Yes, they are 30 laps down, but I think in essence, they're looking at this, you know, like an opportunity just to put mileage on that new 5-liter Judd engine that they've got in this Dallara. They replaced the fuel injectors, they replaced the spark plugs, and I think some of the coils as well, and it seems to be running pretty reasonably right now, so that's good. And they'll gather some valuable data, hopefully collect a few points, but so far the Dyson team is winning winning this battle. The 20 car, though, is still in the garage, and we don't expect to see it back out on the racetrack. So that is not good news for the Dyson team. It means that this number 16 car needs to stay reliable to the end here.
Carrying the colors, as it were, absolutely. Now, one thing we want to go back and take a look at, we've had some remarkable improvements through the pack, led by this car. We talked about it, the Pegasus Racing Lola Porsche, the biggest movers. It leads it handily, up 29 spots from where it qualified to where it was running at its highest, and that is where it sits now, the 9th position, and doing a great job. That number 81 Martini Porsche we talked about from G&W Motorsports, with Brent Martini doing the driving, wasn't even supposed to run here. They brought it out of the mothballs trying to go for the three-peat, and they've gone from 23rd to 7th, and very competitive in the GT category, except for one car, and it's that Ferrari that's just absolutely hooked up. Gleason in the number 10 BMW up 16 spots, 72 Lewis in the Porsche up 15, and in the number 83 machine, that too one of the Porsches, Gearsring, is up 14 spots. So those are our biggest movers at this time. And the one, as we mentioned, a great run after problems all weekend by this number 64 Porsche. Jeremy, you alluded to the problems, though, that have sort of befallen the number 20 team car for Dyson Racing and Sandy Hain. Do you have an update?
Well, there's big movers, then there's the no mover of the number 20. If you look inside the cockpit, remember Dyson was saying there was fluid. They thought it was a master cylinder. There's all kinds of paper towels. They've gone through it. It's actually the power steering. They say they cannot get this car back out for safety reasons. It's just not safe at this point to get it back together and get it back in the race.
Thanks very much, Sandy. And, well, I'll tell you, that car was so fast. Of course, Leitzinger with that pole run, the car had tremendous speed, but something just not working, right?
Well, I'm pointing the screen because I looked down in that shot, and there's no exhaust headers on that car, and I don't understand why they pulled the exhaust headers off that car, but they know more than we do, I guess.
Scavenging for the 16 car.
They may be scavenging parts. I don't know. But anyway, it is a shame to see the 20 car out of the race. But there's the car that is just dominating the GT class right now. Bill Oberlin behind the wheel of that Ferrari 360 GT, and this car has been very impressive.
It has. What with the problems that have befallen number 24 Moser, that was a little bit quicker. This being a brand new car, there was a little concern about, well, what are we going to see in terms of reliability? Well, so far the car has just been ticking along. Yes, there was a pun there for the Gerard Perregaux watch sponsorship, but nonetheless, they have had a great run and lead comfortably now in GT. Welcome back to Watkins Glen, everybody, and as you watch the Doran listed Dallara Judd sweep through your picture, and there is your overall race leader, James Weaver. You're, in a sense, watching the end of an era. There's plenty of great racing yet to go in the Grand American Road Racing Rolex Sports Car Series, but next year the new Daytona prototypes will come online. A little bit earlier, we took a look at those new cars.
Race car design used to require the early creation of mock-ups, then precise varying scale models. But the advent of computer technology has eliminated some of those steps and saves very valuable time.
What we do is the 3D solid modeling has replaced a lot of the actual prototypes and mock-ups that were done in years gone by. Now we do a lot of the prototyping and trying concepts and ideas right on the computer, where we can quickly make changes and adapt as other pieces change. And so what we do is we lay out the whole car in the computer, kind of like what you're seeing here. And as we move through the process, we change things and tweak things till we finally get the concept the way we want it. And then at that point, we make up engineering drawings and start making parts. But we can check for interferences between parts. We can look underneath the car, in this case, and make sure the air jacks are sticking down as far as we'd like them to be. Make sure the suspension components connect where they're supposed to connect, and join up to the mounts that we've designed, and make sure the whole thing, bolts onto the back of the engine the way it's intended to bolt on. As we're going through the design process, we now take different components on the computer, and just like you would out in the shop and fit them together, we fit them together. We have tools that are built into the software that will allow us to check the interferences between components. We can make components move. We can check for volumes, weights, all kinds of engineering information that wasn't available in, say, a 2D CAD system. The software we use is Solid Edge by EDS, and there's a variety of different softwares out there, but this does everything we needed to do as far as designing components, and as you can see on the screen, everything we've done, we've been able to fit it and make sure the functions and the features are the way we want them to be.
And the whole concept of the Daytona prototype is a car that's much more cost effective and yet much more competitive, as you get a lot of different people involved in it. And a little bit later in the show, as a matter of fact, as you can see, because of that new technology, a number of these cars are much farther along in the build process as they get ready to become the premier class of the Rolex Sports Car Series next year, are very well along in the build cycle. As a matter of fact, some drivers have already had seat fittings, and we'll be visiting with them a little bit later in the show. But right now, we're watching James Weaver in the existing top level, the sports racing prototype. And of course, James Weaver is absolutely amazing in these machines, and the race continues and pretty much in his hands.
So, there was a time when the way you designed a racing car was you would take James Weaver, who's your driver, and you would sit him on the floor of the garage, and you take a piece of chalk, and you would you would draw lines around James Weaver, and you would put the wheels here, and you put the the roll hoop there, and that is literally, by laying tubes on the ground and with chalk, that's the way you design race cars, and that is literally how far it has come.
It's amazing what the computer technology has allowed, certainly, and it has allowed you to build and rush things in a sense, but still be very thorough with them. And once again, just a remarkable performance we're seeing here. 6th place overall for the GT class leader here, and this Ferrari has been spot perfect all weekend long. And keeping in mind, it is a brand new chassis based on the chassis that this team has been developing all year, but now it comes from Ferrari, and it carries Ferrari VIN numbers, and it is Ferrari's answer to the Porsche GT3 RS juggernaut.
You just watch this car and you can tell it's it's just a good race car. You can just watch it. You can just watch it. And I guess, that's just my eye, having watched a lot of race cars over the years, but it doesn't do anything unusual. It just goes where build seems to point it, and it doesn't pitch, it doesn't roll, it just does what it's supposed to do. And if they continue to develop these cars, it's going to be a very potent fight between the Porsche GT cars and these Ferrari GT cars. It would be great if some other manufacturers would join in the spirit of what they've done here, which is really, they have taken a street production car, although a very capable one, and turned it into a very capable race car.
You mentioned it doesn't do anything it's not supposed to do, but it also looks like it's fairly forgiving and user-friendly, and that's always a big help. Here is your leader in the American GT category, Charles and Rob Morgan, the father and son, that debuting this second car here, and they too have had a very, very solid run and have always been in the top 3 and now lead their class here at the 6 Hours at the Glen. Welcome back to Watkins Glen, where the Ferrari juggernaut, now I guess you could call it, in the GT division continues. Oberlin and Wagner are having an absolutely glorious run at the front of this one. And right now, Bill Oberlin behind the controls of that car that is working flawlessly. And I'll tell you what, Guy Hobbs, they have to be thrilled with how this new chassis is working.
Absolutely, Greg. You say Bill's behind the wheel. He's getting ready to bring it in. Court's got to get ready to take over the driving. But Court, a 3-lap lead and that new chassis, you've got to be absolutely thrilled with this Ferrari.
We're ecstatic. I mean, the Ferrari Washington team's doing a great job. Gerard Perrigo, the guys are just switched on. I mean, the whole deal's been great. The new chassis is working really well, the new wing. I mean,
overall, just a better package, a 6-hour race. I mean, we're really, really happy to be driving. Bill's a great co-driver. We're just, you know, having a great time racing here, and that's what it's all about.
Any worries with the transmission? Because if you've had any problems, it's been transmission.
No, so far we've had some, but so far the car's been flawless. Knock on wood.
All right, and we're going to let Cole get ready because he's going to get in the car, take over from Bill Orban in about 2 laps.
And I got to tell you, this is very special for Court because he too was at Le Mans last week, and he never even made it into the car he was supposed to drive in the race. It was another Ferrari, the GMB team you were talking about, and the co-driver threw it away early in the going. So this is very nice for Court. Meanwhile, second in this class, obviously the number 81 Porsche, that's a story in and of itself. It wasn't even supposed to be running. We talked about Darren Law, Brent Martini driving, trying to keep the streak alive, make it 3 in a row in 6-hour races at the Glen here for the G&W team. So they find themselves at this stage in a second spot, and a relatively comfortable one at that. So a strong run there, and Brent Martini currently behind the wheel of that machine as they continue to battle on. And I mean, as you pointed out, we've said it a number of times, Jeremy, anything can happen, and one hiccup by that Ferrari team, and this Porsche could be right back in it.
Absolutely. I thought, I think it's great that that the Ferrari guys are doing such a great job, but you never get these Porsches. No. And I think the Ferrari guys know that. You do not bet against these Porsches. They are, you know, well-developed, race-developed cars, and they win races, you know, every weekend of the year. And of course, a 911 did win its class at Le Mans last weekend, so they're very successful, very capable race cars.
Well, you saw Court knocking on wood right there. That's part of the deal. Now we're going to go back.
A little wound up to you?
Yeah, I think he's jazzed to get behind the wheel of that Ferrari. Now, 12th overall, but 5th in class. We have a very good battle, and it's currently led by this machine, the number 26 ACMCO Automotive Motorsports car. Cass Whitehead behind the wheel, I believe, of that car right now, but very close at hand is the number 83 Porsche, another of those GT3Rs, the Renworks Motorsports entry of Dave Standridge, Richard Starenka, and Lars Giersring, who I believe is behind the wheel right now. But there's 2 more cars that are close at hand, the number 40 and 66. The 40 machine, the Allegra Motorsports BMW M3 of Carlos de Quesada, Scooter Gable, who we've heard a lot about, and Scott Newman, and then the number 66 Racers Group Porsche. They are all in the same lap, albeit stretched a little bit, but it is that close. There's the number 40 machine, the Allegra Motorsports. That's a BMW M3. And it's been kind of a quiet run for them, but they have just stayed with it. The car really hasn't had many problems. It was the BMW that we were spooked a little bit. The guy did a nice job of saving it and is able to continue on.
Well, we're more than 4 hours into this race, and we've got 4 cars on the same lap. Yes, they're not fighting for the lead. There is the number. You missed my joke that he was wound up. You just didn't get it.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Well, he's about ready to get behind the wheel of that car. Oberlin should be getting out. Kurt Wagner will be climbing in. Yeah, wound up, Jared Pergo.
See, you know, I thought
ticking
you were sharp.
along.
I thought you were sharp.
Hey, it's a long race in the booth too, okay? Drivers help, obviously, make sure that the change goes okay.
I'm impressed with this team as well, you know. Ferrari of Washington, one of the big players in the Ferrari Challenge, and a team that has grown out of the Ferrari Challenge series, which is not a professional racing series. It's a series where essentially Ferrari sportsmen, oh no, we have the 6 car going very slowly.
Ooh, a lot of smoke. A lot of smoke. Is that the right exhaust bank?
Well, it's the right side of the car, but I think the right side is laying down. You see the splitter is right on the ground there. And so, yes, that's either a broken wheel or broken suspension, and that is not good at all.
It's the right front corner, 3rd overall, 2nd in the SRP division, closing on 2nd overall as well on that number 8 machine. And now Buddy Rice is just struggling to be able to get this car back to pit lane. But even if it is repairable, it's going to be a long stop.
Well, that's the problem, is that you can see how that right front is towed out. And here is, the suspension is loosening up. You can see it. You can see the suspension, that right front moving around there.
There it goes.
And something broke in that right front suspension. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And Buddy doing a nice job to get the car back to pit lane at a reasonable pace, but one of the, a pace where you're not going to hurt the car. But whatever the fix is going to be, I think it's going to take some time on this car. It's not going to be just wheels and tires.
Yeah, well, as we said, from third place, closing on second overall, certainly second in class, but closing on the top two. And then, you know, as we've said, any kind of misstep from the Dyson team, these guys were well placed, and now they're going to affect the driver's change, but this is going to be a very long stop, drop them down the order. They had essentially a 2-lap lead over the car that was fourth in the order, but here's what's going to tell us the story.
Well, as soon as they get that wheel off, we'll be able to have a look at that right front suspension, and I'm quite convinced that they're going to find something very broken in there.
Let's check in.
Maybe it's just a wheel. Sandy, you there?
Yeah, we're there, and I'm looking inside just like you are, and he did radio into the crew that he thought he cut a tire. He's back over the wall now. We'll go try to talk to him, but take a look inside there. Oh, they're going to pull the tire off.
Well, that tire well and truly jammed back into the bodywork and the chassis itself. So this is going to be tough just to get the wheel off.
They haven't got a wheel gun on it yet. There's a wheel gun. So they'll take a run out with a wheel gun, but there's very much something broken in there.
Is that snapped right? There's something snapped right at the end of that shock. Let's go back down to Sandy.
Well, I'm with Buddy right out of the car now. Long stint for you. What happened? What did it feel like?
All of a sudden, something just popped coming up through, not really sure where it's at, over in the boot, coming up back through the boot. All of a sudden, something popped in the right front. I thought it might have been a tire, but obviously it looks like the suspension's broke up front right now.
You were scheduled to come in another lap anyway.
Yeah, that was just for a standard fuel stop for us. It wasn't because we had any problems. I mean, we haven't seen any problems like this all weekend, so we're not really sure what happened, but it looks like a suspension.
Miracle Motorsports team so close, running in second at one point in the race. Guys.
And it looks like it's the bottom of the upright is what it is. It's where the lower wishbone meets the upright, and it's either the wishbone or the upright, but I think it is the upright, so that's going to take some time. If these guys have got some parts prepped and ready to go on that car, they should be able to fix this in about 5 or 6 minutes.
About 5 or 6 minutes, but of course that translates to 2 or 3 laps, and that's not what they wanted at this stage of the race. We'll be back. Welcome back to Watkins Glen, and if you ever needed evidence of what it's like to drive a race car, particularly when it's hot, we present one James Weaver, who has just got out of the car, and he was in for a couple of long stints. And Jeremy, that is exhaustion, and that is heat-related in his case, I'm sure. Boy, it was tough duty.
Well, I'll tell you what, you may look at that car and say it's an open cockpit car, and, you know, there's a lot of air, except that the radiator's in the front, and it exhausts just in front of the cockpit. So you actually do have the potential to get quite a bit of very, very warm air into that cockpit. The air doesn't circulate quite as well as you would like, and those cars are very warm to drive.
James Weaver is awfully fit, though, and I think he may be ready to talk to Guy Hobbs. Guy?
He's actually ready to get a little massage and a little relaxation. James, but even for you, you normally get out of these cars looking pretty cool, but pretty hard and hot work out there for you today.
Yeah, it's just incredibly humid, and for some reason they've got a hot air leak out of the engine bay, and it's just dumping all the engine heat into the cockpit. But the car is actually flying. It's just a bit hot.
You've actually slowed the pace down a little bit the last few laps there. Is that deliberate?
Yeah, we got such a huge lead, but we're just massaging it along.
Talking massaging, you're about to get one too, right?
Yeah, Alison's our secret weapon. She's absolutely fantastic. If I was a rich man, I'd have a yacht full of champagne, and I'd have an Alison on it.
On that note, I'll send it down to Sandy.
Right now, the Morgan Dollar team is coming in. The father-son duo, Charles getting out of the car, and his son, Rob, getting in the car. He's actually got this piece of plastic taped to his back to make the seat fit him. They're going to take on tires, fuel, and they are also lifting the hood to put in a quart of oil, and they will be down and away in just a moment. Great run for this father-son team.
Awesome run, particularly since it's the first time they've come out with the two-car program. It's always been a one-car program. Just changing tires on the right side now, and as you said, looking under the hood for whatever might be needed, and there it is. They're going to pop the hood now, do the oil, and then they'll be able to be away. And they've got a fairly comfortable lead in the category at this stage, so they can afford to take their time and do it right, and that, of course, is very key. Looks like they can change out the windshield, Jeremy.
Yeah, it does look like the windshield's coming off, which is interesting, because often what a lot of these teams will do is they'll have a tear off on there, and I guess these guys have decided they've got Zeus fasteners on that windshield, and that must be a plexi screen. Yeah, it is. It's not glass, it's plexiglass. So it is more prone to pitting. Or no, that's just a service. They're just servicing it.
They have to. Well, that's interesting. They have to pull that off to get down and do some of the service work on it. So everything looks fairly routine. Meanwhile, Chris Dyson out front. Speaking of comfortable leads at this stage, I guess with the success James has had, he'll just have to settle for the eye.
He will have to settle for the eye, yes. And he says, if
I
were a rich man.
Yeah.
We know James Weaver very well. James, this is a remarkable relationship that James Weaver has had with Rob Dyson, and I think it is going on about 15 years now, maybe even more. And James has been with Rob. I mean, you consider that Chris is, 24 years old.
Right.
So, he was, well, you do the math. I'm not very good.
5? Yeah, probably.
When 8 or 9 years old when they started their relationship. So what a great opportunity for Chris Dyson to get teamed up with James Weaver, and a great opportunity for James Weaver to pass on what he knows about driving race cars to Chris Dyson.
Well, and of course this pairing took the win at the most recent round at Phoenix, and Rob Dyson put it very interestingly. He said it was a seminal moment for him. It was something very special, the passing of the torch from him being a real actor driving the car, although he did a stint here, to now his son. And there's Allison at work. We are back at Watkins Glen, where Chris Dyson, now at the controls of the number 16 Dyson, Riley, and Scott Ford, continues to lead here, and lapping about the same as Weaver was. Of course, Weaver backed off just a little bit as well, and they are just in conservation mode, bringing this car home to put another win, and it'll be the 9th year that either a Dyson or a Doran entry has won here. And of course, we have another stop that's going to be coming up here in August as well, so the rivalry may yet still be afoot. Don't worry about it. You can see the Doran car back there, of course, number of laps down, and they've been in and out and made continual work, and they're really treating us right now like a bit of a, and the number 54 and the 34 off as well, both of the GT contenders. 34, the Zip Racing Porsche, which had been so fleet early until it had that problem with that left rear tire, and the 54 in the hands of David Murray and RJ Valentine, and the two of those cars getting together in some way, shape, or form. It may have been cause-effect, or they may have just gotten together. Both of them, the 34, lucky, Jeremy, he was able to get out of the gravel or skip through it. Now we'll be able to continue.
Yeah, boy, the gravel can certainly claim a car. And, what you hate to have happen is get into the gravel, and often what will happen is those little rocks will get up into the suspension or up into the wheels, and they can cut wheels or cut tires, or, they can do all sorts of damage. But it looks like both of those cars have cleared the gravel pit.
Fair evidence here as we go on board with Terry Borschaller, the car's second place overall, leading in SRP2 with just how dirty things are. You've got bugs and debris and junk coming off of the track and the like, and that's what the drivers have. Of course, they have tear-off, and every time they get out of the car, they do a thorough cleaning on their helmet and put some more tear-offs on when they get ready to go on board for their stint. But just an idea of just some of the conditions that you're dealing with on a hot, muggy day here.
Well, there's also stuff in the air. I mean, there's been a lot of cars on the racetrack today, and so there's water that comes off those cars and oil comes off those cars, and you hit the odd bug here and there, and there's just, you get cars going off the road and putting dirt out on the racetrack, and there are just all sorts of things you need to contend with.
Having a very good run here, and the SRP2 category, in a sense, embodies some of what that new Daytona prototype category is supposed to do. Earlier, we showed you some of the looks at it, but the drivers are so excited as well, as we'll check out now. Earlier, we showed you how the advent of three-dimensional computer-aided design and manufacturing, or 3D CAD/CAM engineering, assists the process of race car design and fabrication. But eventually, you have to take the application from the virtual to the real, and that means the build begins in the race shop. The internal structure, primarily the all-important driver cell, is created, and the engine development and installation process also begins. Eventually, the drivers are fitted to their office.
Very cool. I mean, this fits me perfect, except the seat's a little big. I think this will fit you perfect.
I think it's an incredible idea that's coming to reality. I think it's going to make it much more competitive. It should be better for the competitors and for the fans. I think it's going to take a lot of the technical aspect away from it and put driving back into the driver's hands.
But with this concept, we have a basic standard chassis with a lot of different engine configurations into that, into those different chassis. And so all the cars will be relatively equal. And what's going to make a team a winning team or a losing team is a preparation of that team and how the drivers do and all of the things that really make racing interesting, rather than having a car that's so superior.
I like the uniqueness of the formula. It allows a much larger spectrum of drivers to compete for the overall win, which in sports car racing has been not available to most people because there's GT cars and GTS cars and different class prototypes. So I think this will open the door for more people to compete for the overall win, which is much more rewarding, and it's what all the teams and drivers really want.
And Grand Am believes that's what the fans really want as well. And you can hear the enthusiasm from the drivers. And when a driver like Hurley Haywood, with 11 total wins at either Le Mans, Daytona, or Sebring, speaks, you listen. And one of his great concerns was, with all the success he's had, that he thought there may be some real problems in the future of sports car racing. He's convinced that the Daytona prototype is the answer, and it'll happen next year.
We're back at Watkins Glen. You've heard how hot it is. Well, this is a helmet dryer that they've got here at the Ran team. Terry Borcheller just out of the car. Boy, I'm stumbling in hot, too. A long stint for you.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. We got a pretty good lead, so I was able to run fairly conservative, which made it a little bit easier.
It looked like you were just riding it around out there, enjoying it.
Well, I tell you, it's one of the benefits of having a pretty good lead. It's not very often that you find that, but some of the other cars have gone out because of the attrition, but we've done a good job. We got a great team, Ran Racing, and my teammates Anthony Lazzaro and Ralph Kellner has just put on an awesome performance, as they always do, and it's hopefully we can sail to the end.
Hey, thanks, Terry. A lot of fun here with the SRP2s, guys.
It has been just a stellar run for them, no question about it. Terry Borcheller, of course, qualifying the car in pole, and it's pretty much been their race. As you see, the number 6 Miracle Motorsports machine back in the pits. They pulled the nose clip off there and went to that wheel again, Jeremy. I don't know if you were able to spot anything.
No, we were kind of looking at it on one of our other monitors, and they were just starting to pull the wheel off, and then we moved away. And I'm not sure. There was some discussion about maybe they had some loose body work on it, which was a result of when the suspension bolt came out and the suspension went askew, and that certainly would have hit something and run into something under there. So anything is possible, but certainly they're not happy with that car right now.
Let's check in with Sandy.
I can add, guys, I just want to talk to you about, when they came in before, he was reporting a vibration with the steering wheel. They figured out that it was probably nothing to do with suspension. They think there was a loose body part on there that was shaking it, and that was their early diagnosis on that car. So a little bit of frustration there for that number 6 car. They also have new brake pads on. He had a little bit of a spin, got it back, getting him up to temperature.
Well, and he's heading back out once again, but it was an unfortunate development. We're going to go back and take a look at what happened, because it took him out of a sure third place, maybe a second.
And watch that right front. You see right here, it has started to loosen up, and now a little puff of smoke there, and there it goes right there. And looking to see if I can see a bolt coming out from under that car, but I couldn't. But because that apparently is what happened. The bolt that bolts the lower wishbone to the upright, the upright essentially being what holds the wheel bearings, holds the wheel up, came out, disappeared, and they replaced that bolt, and that's about all they had to do.
Going away from you at 140 miles an hour and you missed it, small bolt.
And it was slow-mo, too.
Yeah.
Slow-mo.
No such problems for this car right here. That number 16 Dyson machine has just, it's been a phenomenal run, and you come to expect that from this team very often here at the Glen, and certainly anytime they race. But you heard Terry Borcheller talking about one of the real upsides about having a big lead is the fact that you can backpedal a little bit. You don't have to drive the car right on the ragged edge, take risks in traffic, that sort of thing. But also, you don't have to take risks just overdriving the tires and the brakes and the whole thing. And of course, in these conditions, if you back off a little bit, the drivers are aided a bit.
Well, you remember the first hour of the race with Butch Leitzinger and James Weaver essentially going at it, hammer and tong, and Didier Tay's not far behind. And that pace, to run that pace for 6 hours, you know, something's going to happen. And I'm not saying it was the pace that took the 27 and the 20 cars out of it, but certainly you'd rather be able to stroke around 4 or 5 seconds slower than that. And but I'll tell you what, Chris Dyson's done a very nice job. Remember, only 2 drivers in this car, Chris Dyson and James Weaver, and Chris certainly really getting a lot of great experience this year. He's got 1 race win with James Weaver already, and they seem like they are in really very good shape now to win the 6 hours here at the Glen, and just a great season for James Weaver and Chris Dyson thus far.
Well, you mentioned the experience he's getting, and one bit of experience he's getting is on a hot day today, 90 degrees, extremely high humidity, and very hard racing. He's finding out, do I want to be a professional race car driver? You looked at James Weaver when he got out of the car. Chris is going, by the end of his stint, is going to be in pretty similar shape, I would think.
Yeah, well, I think he'll happily accept the challenge.
I would agree, I would think as well. Now here's your leader in the SRP2 division, still 2nd overall, and what a day it's shaping up for Rand Racing. They are sitting right now leading in SRP2 and 2nd in SRP2, 2nd and 3rd overall in these smaller prototype machines, and have had a very, very strong day. Yes, they are the better part of a little more than 3 laps behind the overall race leader. But if any problem happens with that Dyson car, we've got SRP2 machines from the same team running 1-2. Welcome back to Watkins Glen as we are closing in on the final few minutes, if you will, of the Sports Car Grand Prix weekend. And of course, this is the 6 hours of the Glen, and we're winding it down just a little bit at this stage. And the gentleman who's really been in control, along with his co-driver James Weaver, is Chris Dyson in the latter stages here. Spent a fair amount of time in the car and has done an absolutely brilliant job in fairly tough conditions here. And he's coming up. That car in front, the Miracle Motorsports entry, for all the problems it's had, is still 2nd in the SRP division. So he's about to put another lap on that machine, give you an idea of the dominance that this Dyson equip has been able to put together today, and doing a superb job. And again, I can't say really enough, I think, about Chris Dyson and his abilities that he's proving here once again. And what
It's been a tough day physically. You know, it's very, very warm out, very humid. These cars, you heard James Weaver a little bit early say that they've got some leakage and they're getting some air blowing in from the engine compartment, a lot of hot air. So it is a difficult situation for these guys. This racetrack is a pretty physical racetrack. Yes, these cars do have power steering, but they're very physical cars to drive, no question about it.
There's the car that sits 2nd overall, but leads in the SRP2 division. Ralph Kellner's now behind the wheel, shared as well by Terry Borchler, the qualifier, who put it on pole, and Anthony Lazzaro. Great to see that, and that's the fastest lap in the class is by Kellner's at a 1 minute 45.4, and that's getting right down there in terms of qualifying time. So Kellner's has been having a very strong run, but every time Borchler gets in the car and Lazzaro gets in the car, they'll throw in some very fast laps, and then they'll run at a certain prescribed pace, and are doing a very nice job. And the performance here has been just stellar, considering they're 2nd overall. But maybe even more impressive to me, Jeremy, is this car's run. Brand new chassis. It has been absolutely flawless from the get-go, and it's now 5th overall up in the top 5.
That is very impressive, and the car has been, you know, Court, before he got in, you knock on wood, because, you know, it has almost been too perfect, the run that these guys have had. Both drivers have done an exceptional job with the car. The car has run perfectly. The team has done a great job. You can just watch the car. The car is doing everything it should, and they've had nothing but routine stops, and they deserve to be 5th overall.
They do. The GT leader here is your American GT leader. This is for the big tube-frame V8 pony cars, essentially. And it's another sort of Cinderella story. Rob Morgan runs in the car right now, but it is his father, Charles, who's his co-driver, and that's a very special moment to have father and son being able to compete together as teammates and do so. And this is the first time they've come out with a 2-car program. The number 46 car has been struggling a little bit, but this 47 Computer Associates machine has been equally flawless, really.
They have done a great job. Charles, very, very experienced, and Rob now has been racing professionally for 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 years. Time seems to fly. And so they're both very, very capable of getting the job done in the most professional way, and that's what they've done today. And, you know, this morning when we were looking at the grid, we certainly thought that these guys would be the favorite to win the AGT.
and they have lived up to that billing. And here is the car that leads in the GTS division. Of course, the Celine was out front, but had some serious problems and is now retired. This is the front porch racing Porsche GT3R running in GTS trim of Mirzan Soriano and Wilson, the number 14 machine. They're a little bit further back in the order, quite honestly not near the pace of that Celine, but this is one of those classic examples of Porsche reliability and all that it's famed for coming to roost.
No question about it. As you said that, a couple little puffs of smoke.
I saw that too, so kind of gave me pause for a second.
The GTS class, you know, the field definitely needs a little bolstering. There's no question about it. You know, all in good time. There's another little puff of smoke there from this 14 car.
Well, boy,
it's bigger than a little puff. It's looking a bit more serious. It looks like it's out of the right bank. It almost looks like there's oil spilling onto that right.
It's not coming out of the pipe itself.
No, it looks like some kind of fluid spilling onto the right side exhaust system, and and of course the car slowed down because the GT BMW has gone by the number 16 car. So I hope we haven't jinxed these guys.
As well, and we'll have to watch and see. Yeah, it's continuing. As you can see, it's not coming out of the pipe itself. And the number 6 back in the pits. And this is a driver's change at this point here now. So it looks as though we're going to see James Gouet getting on board and taking, nope, that's Buddy Rice going back on board. So they obviously want, with the finish coming up, this should be their last stop. And they want Buddy to bring it home here at Watkins Glen. We are back at Watkins Glen as we approach the end of this 6 hours of the Glen for the Sports Car Grand Prix weekend here at this fascinating circuit. And there's the number 16. Again, not missing a beat. Has just been absolutely flawless. And young Chris Dyson continues to do just an absolutely superlative job. We have been talking quite a bit about the heat and the conditions that the drivers and the teams are facing. And there's another group that I'd really like to just tip the hat to here if we can. You know, Jeremy, it's very, you know, we're in a cool booth, let's be honest about it. And the people that are spinning tape and all that, the hard job that they do, the producers, directors, tape department, but they're in that air-conditioned truck. How about our camera people? How about the pointers that are down in the pit lane? How about the spotters? How about our pit people that are out there working and right out in this heat? Keep in mind, some of these camera people have been on their feet at their camera stations for the better part of 6 hours now. So just a big tip of the hat. It is tough duty out there for them, and they are the best in the business. We'd also like to mention one person in particular. I mentioned spotters, and our chief spotter here is the inimitable Chuck Dressing. And Chuck, this is his 35th visit to watching racing here at Watkins Glen over the years. And he is absolutely one of the true superlative minds on motorsports. And it's great to have him with us again. And Chuck, hope you're enjoying your 35th visit here. And we are now watching Chris Dyson bring the car in. This should be their final stop. And we'll see if Chris stays in. And Guy will tell us about it.
Yeah, it looks like Chris is going to stay in. We think James said it's too hot. You're the young man. You stay out there in the heat and finish this thing off with about 35 minutes to go. So they're just going to fuel it, no tire change, and they'll send the young Chris Dyson out. And actually, this will be the first time for Chris to cross the finish line as a leader. So I'm sure he's pretty excited about that too. Fuel is in and Chris is off.
Thanks very much, Guy. And seniority does have its benefits, doesn't it? James sitting there enjoying a nice massage going, carry on, lad.
You know, the protege and the mentor.
That's right. Well, what a great opportunity for Chris here. I mean, he's got a few laps in hand. There's no heavy pressure on him for him to bring it home in one of these things, get the checkered flag, and in no less a prestigious event than the 6 hours at the Glen.
Yeah, and I think it's great. You know, he does have to bring it home, and the pressure is on him. It's not heavy pressure. Because, as you say, he does have a handsome little lead, but nevertheless, he has to get the job done. He has to stay sharp with the car. He has to stay focused and keep the car out of trouble, and that's his job, and it's all part of the learning process.
And another of our class leaders, the AGT category, number 47, is coming in. Now, they've been stopping fairly frequently here, and I wonder if there may be some problem with oil or something along those lines. But they are coming in here, and let's see, doesn't look like a driver's change. The refueler at the back is the one with the helmet on. Let's go back down to Guy Hobbs.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned they keep coming in a lot. Rob Morgan is complaining of personally overheating. He's absolutely had it. Exhausted. He's just drunk 16-ounce bottle of water in about 2 seconds. He radioed in, I'm coming in, and Charles Morgan started getting his helmet on and getting ready to come in, and then Rob then radioed back in and said, forget it. I'm going to stick it and finish this race off myself. Charles said, oh, okay, carry on. But Rob Morgan definitely suffering from heat in the car there, but they are the class leader, of course.
Well, and there's an interesting point, isn't it? I mean, unlike the prototype cars with the engine behind or even the Ferraris or whatever, you've got a big, hot, heavy, hard-breathing V8 right in front of you.
These cars are about the most uncomfortable to drive. There's no question about it, because you cannot escape the heat. A V8 car, you know, most of these cars have an exhaust system. Because it's a V8, it's got exhaust on each side of the car, and there is just no escaping the heat. And I don't care what you do to it, how you seal it off or how you insulate it or what you wear on your feet, you are going to get hot, and there's just no escaping it.
You're literally enveloped by it, with, as you said. I mean, even the tranny and drive shaft tunnel, the whole thing, that just radiates immense amount of heat. It's unbelievable. I remember Paul Gentilozzi talking about some races in a Trans Am car, which are only 100 miles, where you'd literally burn your hands going to the shift lever in some of them. It was that hot. There is Ralph Kellener's leading in the SRP2 division, and as we mentioned, continues to run. That's that number 14 Porsche. I saw some smoke. I thought it might be from the 47, but it's from that Porsche. But it just keeps continuing to run. Kellner's going to want to get by in a hurry if that is spraying just a little bit. And here, this is really, I think, an amazing story in a way, Jeremy. These guys, as you recall, really made a mistake. There's no other way to put it, by not changing the refueling position on that car prior to the start of the race. Spent the first 10 laps doing that. But since they have come out, that car has been absolutely flawless, and it has been extremely quick. And that is, of course, the never say die spirit that is necessary in endurance racing. We'll be back. Welcome back to Watkins Glen. We are now in our final half hour, and the number 22 machine, third in the SRP2 category, is in the pits. Final stop for them, and here is the final stop for the Ferrari, and that is Kurt Wagner getting out Bill Oberlin, getting behind the wheel of that machine, and looks like, yep, they are going for tires, at least on the back of that car, and otherwise a fairly routine stop. Car comes in, and again, it's just, to me, very impressive. 5th overall in front of some SRP2 or SRP machines for that matter as well, and having a good job. And let's head down to Sandy Hank.
Well, actually, Kurt Wagner is getting in the car. He's going to finish this off. He said, I showed up in his pit just a little bit ago, and he said, oh, no. I said, that's a good sign for you. Such bad luck this year that your Ferrari deserves a break, and they're down and away, guys.
And for Bill Oberlin, I mentioned for Kurt Wagner that this is a nice moment if this everything pans out and they get the win. And it'll be the first for this car if they do hang on to it. And Wagner having just a miserable amount in many ways. Well, so did Bill. I mean, Bill was over there driving for Don Panos' team, and they had nothing but myriad problems. Oh, it was just started well before the race even began. And Bill just sort of put up with that. So this would be a little bit of poetic justice, I think, for those two drivers, certainly.
Well, they're both Southern California boys. They hang out together, and they have, this doesn't all look quite right.
Giving your crew a ride is a good thing on a press day.
There we go.
All right, he's back out and underway. That's number 22 Archangel Motorsport Services machine, and his 4th overall, and will retain that. 3rd in the SRP2 category as well. And as we watch, here comes the overall race leader, Dyson, sweeping down through turn 1. He's going to, you'd think, get around here fairly easily and make his way up the S's. Does so, no problem.
These Riley and Scott's debuted back in 1995, and that's a pretty good life for a racing car, 7 years. And they have been effective since the very beginning. I mean, they have been very impressive from the very beginning, and this team, the Dyson team, has done a bulk of the development work. They were the first people to commit to this Riley and Scott, and they have stuck with it, mostly with Ford power, although sometimes they're called Lincolns, but they're all the same, really.
Well, really, when the Riley and Scott, when this chassis, the Mark chassis came out, the whole concept was it was designed thinking with North American racetracks in mind. Sometimes pretty bumpy, sometimes fairly point and squirt tracks, but even the high-speed tracks are one where you need a lot of downforce, and that's where this car excels. It's good over the bumps, and it makes incredible stick.
Well, you're absolutely correct. It was absolutely designed for North American racetracks. The car was never successful, never has been successful at Le Mans. Le Mans requires a very different package, and a number of different teams have taken, including Riley and Scott, the factory-back team, have taken these cars to Le Mans and run them, and they've just never had success with them because they're not designed for that type of racetrack. Le Mans is very unique in that sense. So, but you cannot argue with the success they've had here. And you know what? It's a very user-friendly car. You know, you can put a lot of different types of drivers in those Rileys, and they will go quick and be comfortable, and that's fantastic.
Very user-friendly package, perhaps only excelled by the Porsche GTs. Talk about user-friendly and long-lived and extremely successful. Adam Merzon driving this one, leading in GTS, quite a few laps down, and still smoking, but still getting the job done and making its way around. They may have one more stop here before we get to the end, but this car is, as I mentioned about the Mosler, it was a never-say-die effort. You come out, you do what you have to do, and you hope things fall your way if you're not the fleetest car out there, and that's exactly what's happened for them. To get back real quick to what we were talking about with the Riley and Scott, it was in the same era when the Ferrari 333 SP came out, which was much more a high-speed track. It didn't make the downforce of the Riley and Scott, but it didn't have the drag, and it was interesting when they were going head-to-head for many years. You get to one track, and the Ferrari would excel. You get to the next track, and the Riley and Scott would excel. And it really was just a great battle for a number of years between those two different chassis.
No question about it. And it's sad to see that most of the Ferraris are gone down. Of course, with the new rules next year, there will be no Ferraris. The Doran team was very, very successful with the Ferraris, and they've moved on to the Dallara with the Judd Power. And but the Ferrari 333 SP was a very, very successful racing car, especially here in North America, but had some success in Europe as well.
Well, and keep in mind the Doran team itself is going to be designing and building one of those new Daytona prototypes. There's the car that it's fielding now that you were just talking about, the Dallara Judd, but it will be a constructor for the new Daytona prototypes, and who knows, maybe they'll homologate a Ferrari engine and give it a shot. We'll be back.
Glen is the nursery for American road racing, then the Seneca Lodge is the playground for winning drivers. Preserves the history and tradition of road racing. Behind the bar, that's not potpourri you're looking at. Those are the actual laurel wreaths from the winning drivers. Drivers like Jackie Stewart back in 1972 and Emerson Fittipaldi. Tradition is the winning team comes here to party. And you can't forget that old Nickelodeon machine, just a nickel and a lot of fun. Question is, who's going to be partying here tonight?
That is just an amazing place, and I think in answer to the question that Sandy posed, I think this guy might be doing a little bit of partying.
He may be, and I'm sure James Weaver will join him, and Mr. Rob Dyson as well.
I would think so. We continue to run now under yellow, although you see the lights are out of the pace car, so we look to be going back to green fairly soon. But let's show you why we were yellow, and it's kind of a sad development here. The car that was running third in American GT, and Jeremy, just looked like something wiggled there, and off you went.
Yeah, the car kind of listed a little bit more coming out of the inner loop, and that was a pretty light hit. The foam blocks there taking some of it, and the tires taking some of the impact there, but the car was not able to back out of the barrier, and so they're putting it on a flatbed, and they are done for the day.
Meanwhile, the 27 now, they've got Freddie Lienhardt Jr. out. They've got Didier Taze in. They've again swapped out the injectors. This team simply refuses to quit. I think making good use of this as a long test session to try and work in the and work out the problems of that Judd engine. And I almost wonder, going back to that number 90 thing, the way that suddenly wiggled, if there it is on the hook, they're either pulling it off, whether something didn't actually break that had them head off, and that may be why they have to be in the flatbed, because as you said, that wasn't that hard a hit, especially into that soft stuff.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if something broke, because that all looked very routine to me. You can see the lights are out on the safety car. Chris Dyson lined up behind that Ford Thunderbird.
Rest of the field coming through. Attrition has played certainly a role here, but on the other hand, there's still a fair number of cars that have survived the heat and intensity here of the 6 hours of the Glen as we're into our final almost 10 minutes. We're getting very close to wrapping this one up here as they're funneling out now, coming out of the boot section of the track, if you will, and have rejoined the Glen short course in this just extremely quick left-hander, turn number 10, and then into the final corner. And Taze is going to bring it out and try and bring it home, see if they can get those injectors to live for a little bit. They're speculating that they're just overheating the coils in the injectors, which is fairly interesting. Quickly down to Sandy on that.
Well, that's exactly what they think is going on. They have just, they put the thermometer up, you know, the temperature read, 300 degrees on those injectors when they pulled them out. The coils, they replaced the coils. The second set did the same thing. So they're going to have to go back to the drawing board and look at those coils.
Thanks very much, Sandy. When we go back to green, we've got some fairly interesting developments here. As the 6 and the 50 or the 33 machine going at, now it's not necessarily a class battle certainly, but overall position, and to bring a GT car home in 5th, pretty remarkable. Field streaming down into turn 1. And there goes that Ferrari. Sits in the 5th overall position right now, and they head now up through the S's. And this late in the race, the cars have been, broken up in terms of their little battles, but there's a lot of room to race on the track. With just a little bit of time left, Jeremy, this heat, the condition of the drivers, what's it like now? They have them all packed up.
Well, I think for most of these guys, they'd be perfectly happy to be finished up here. For a lot of them, the cars are not in great shape, and there are, in most of the classes, it's going to be tough for any positions to change here unless we run into some mechanical failure. I know Rob Morgan ducked in on that last yellow to get another bottle of water and cool off a little bit. Very, very hot in his AGT car, so it gets very tough by the end of the day.
Well, you made a very good point too, didn't you? And while we were in the break, you said that while they're under yellow, the air doesn't move around inside those closed cockpit vents as well. And they had a big enough margin. You said, well, bring him, he could come in, sit, just pack some ice into his driver's suit, have a drink, and even lose a lap because they've got plenty of laps in hand to get back out and be a little bit fresher.
They do, in fact, have quite a margin in AGT, but I also know that they'd like to stay in the top 10 overall, which they are 10th overall right now, and I think they'd like to stay there.
Oh, the number 66, sorry to jump in, Jeremy, but the number 66 Racers Group car, another tire has gone. This time, though, it's the right rear corner. It was the left rear corner earlier in the race. And we just saw the explosion of rubber out the back, and then it starts to delaminate and wants to come right off of that rim again. And this late in the race to have that develop, that is a tough break indeed. They weren't that far. They were in 14th at this point and maybe had a shot at moving up a couple of spots before this ended. That's gone away.
Well, here's the good news. It didn't happen in front of the pit lane, with 3 miles to drive around. Here's another look at it as they come up out of the, it actually took a piece of bodywork with it. Very cleanly, I might add.
Boy, Mike Schramm, nice piece of driving there when it exploded. I mean, it snapped sideways on him.
So now they've evened out there on the rear of that car, one left and one right side tire. There is Chris Dyson.
He just continues to click off the laps here as we start to get ever closer to the checkered flag at the end of the 6 hours of the Glen. And Chris Dyson, maybe he's the one heading to Seneca Lodge. Looks pretty good. Welcome back to the Glen and late race development. Right there, the pass for the GTS lead, and you can see that the number 14 Porsche that had held it for such a long time has had the windshield collapse on it. And as a result, the number 72 Porsche, the Jack Lewis Enterprises machine, swept by and is now your GTS leader. Unbelievable development late in the going. And basically, this has been a huge gift for this car right here. And let's go back and show you what happened. And it was just an amazing development, Jeremy.
Well, they're on the front straightaway. We've got a great shot of it. You can see our top left, the windshield is dimpled in a little bit, and then it just starts to go more and more and more and more, and then watch, it just comes in right there, and you can see it comes right down on the steering wheel, obstructing the driver's view, and then at that point, there's no steering, you can't see where you're going, and we just lock up and we spun to the inside, and no major car damage, but the car lost about 2 laps through that whole episode and the lead in GTS.
And the driver did a great job. He got it going again, Adam Merzon, and it fell down even further. And what Adam ended up doing, he drove that 2/3 of that lap, holding the glass, the broken windshield, up off of the steering wheel, trying to bring it around, and did a great job getting it into the pits, but just not fast enough. The number 72 machine came through. So now he gets to finish the race, sans windshield. Good thing he's running a full-face helmet inside that car, and he's going to give it his best to bring it home. But 72 at Jack Lewis Enterprises Porsche is now your leader in the GTS division. Unbelievable development, and that is, of course, the very nature of endurance racing and why you never give up. Meanwhile, Chris Dyson, hoping something equally bizarre does not befall him right now, because he has really driven an absolutely superlative race, of course, guided by James Weaver, and a guy named Pat Smith, that maybe we don't talk enough about, who is the crew chief, the team manager of Dyson Racing, and one he always preps just superb cars, but he also calls great races.
Well, and Pat Smith has been with Rob Dyson for many, many years, and they've won many, many races together. And, you know, continuity has a lot to do with that. You've got a team owner who has a crew chief, and of course, in James Weaver, a driver that's been with the team for many, many years. And the continuity, you can never underestimate that, because it's people that make all this work. And I know that sounds very cliche, but it's very true. And people that work well together and respect each other, as these guys do, are going to be successful, and they certainly have been.
And there it is. And there it is, the white flag. One more lap for Chris Dyson. And he will be able to add the 6 hours of the Glen to his very brief but rising rather spectacularly resume here. Remember, he and Weaver won at Phoenix. And Rob Dyson incredibly proud there. I would think, Jeremy, that to have your next win be the very next race, and at a race like the 6 hours of the Glen, pride may not be enough to describe what Rob Dyson was.
Well, and this racetrack is almost like a home track for these guys. Rob Dyson and his family from Poughkeepsie, New York. Lime Rock is actually closer to Poughkeepsie distance-wise, but this is upstate New York, and this is Watkins Glen, New York. So I think it'll mean a lot to this team and his family. And a great accomplishment by Chris Dyson and the Dyson team and James Weaver. I think we've got to give James Weaver a lot of credit for working with Chris Dyson and you know, making them as strong as they are as a team.
Also, you have to give tremendous kudos to the Rand Racing SRP2 program. These two cars have been absolutely faultless all day, never separated by more than a car or two, and now they're going to run back here as we are on the white flag lap. They're going to come through second and third overall, first and second in class, a dominant display. And again, these cars turned out immaculately prepped and certainly superbly driven.
Yeah, no question about that. This has been a very solid effort.
But up front it is Chris Dyson. One more turn. He sweeps out of the final corner here at Watkins Glen, and he will share the win. The 2002 6 Hours of the Glen with James Weaver, but there was Dad. Proud father on the radio, I'm sure. A very emotional moment for Rob, watching his son take another win here. And as you said, Jeremy, coached very ably and befriended very nicely by James Weaver. Meanwhile, through that final corner, here they go, coming into the side-by-side formation. Numbers 8 and 7 respectively for Rand Racing. Second and third overall. There's Terry Borchler enjoying the moment as well. And there's the driver, Ralph Kellner, has got to be feeling very, very good about what this team has certainly achieved here as he comes through now turn one of the cool-down lap. And here's the number 33 Ferrari, and it's unfortunate that late in the going, the number 6, Riley and Scott from Miracle Motorsports, was able to just get by this car and take the top 5 spot, but nonetheless, 6 overall will be there for the Ferrari in just a minute. Welcome back to Watkins Glen, everybody, where it's actually cooling off just a little bit, and Victory Circle is the place to be. The crowd building, and Guy Hobbs is with the winners. Guy?
I'm with young Chris Dyson. And Chris, your dad got his first ever professional win here at Watkins Glen some years ago, however. But now you get your first winner here at Watkins. You're going to be real thrilled with that.
Well, we were talking about it coming into the weekend, and we were here 15 years ago with Price Cobb and Vern Schuppen, and my dad and my grandfather was here, and we won then, and it's great to come back here and carry on a family tradition. I'll tell you, God, Boys did a great job, and I'm proud of everybody.
Are you guys going to carry on a Watkins Glen tradition and go up to Seneca Lodge tonight?
I don't know. We'll have to talk about that. I'm sure a few beers wouldn't be a bad idea.
All right, congratulations to the Dyson team. James Weaver, Chris Dyson, of course, Rob Dyson, the team owner. Back up to you, Greg.
Thanks very much, Guy. And you can see right there is the emotion. I mean, they have been so close as a father and son for some time, and then to see that kind of a result at a track that means so much is pretty special. There is the overall win and the SRP win going to the Dyson and Weaver team. Then, of course, second and third, a great effort for Rand Racing. The number 8 Kellner's Borchello Lazaro entry just getting in front of the Franchitti Janssen and Rand entry. Fourth overall, another of the SRP2 cars. This from Mark Angel. Nice to have them back. And fifth, another never say die effort by that number 6 Miracle Motorsports team and Buddy Rice, able to get the top 5, second in SRP late in the going. That pushed back the number 33 Ferrari a spot, but nonetheless they get the win in the GT category. And of course, right at the end, the number 72 Porsche taking advantage of opportunity and able to sneak by the number 14 with the broken windshield and take the win in the GTS category. So all in all, an absolutely fascinating race unfolding. And at this stage, from here on back, with the exception of that number 24 with Perrier Barbosa, who had the problems early and then just continued to run, the rest of these cars all struggling a little bit, but they made it to the end for most of them, and that's pretty amazing. And to finish second and third in the overall in the SRP class, Sandy, pretty amazing too.
Amazing and exhausted Ralph Kellner's on the end. We talked to Terry Borchello a little bit ago, and Anthony Lazaro, like clockwork, clinical. It's like you had a playbook and you followed it, check by check, step by step.
Well, basically left off where the three of us left off at Daytona with Bill Rand, too. I mean, I haven't driven with these guys in a while, but just like Daytona, again, it just worked like clockwork all day. And just good to be back with Rand Racing. I mean, obviously, you know, 2 cars now that are running at the front and just, you know, 2 other awesome co-drivers over here. But really, I got to thank BG Products for their support, their continued support in both my careers, and I just really appreciate it.
Okay, a great effort for the Rand Racing team. 2 and 3 here today. Guy?
Thanks, Andy. We're over here with our GT winner, Bill Auberlin. Bill, the Ferrari held together perfectly, and just a fantastic run for you guys here today.
Yeah, it's a long time coming for this team. I mean, they have worked their hearts out. We've led just about every race there is. Finally, I think they got the little bugs worked out of it. By our Gerard Perregaux watches, after 6 hours, we finally won one, and man, they deserve it, I tell you.
Well, you guys ran like clockwork, as they were saying in the booth earlier.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, ever since we got such a great sponsors like Gerard Perregaux, and we got Ferrari behind us, we got the team behind us, it's making our job a lot easier, and the car was almost flawless this whole weekend.
All right, a good omen for the rest of the season. Bill Auberlin, Court Wagner coming home in the GT winners with the Ferrari. Back to you, Greg.
Well, they've done so much to develop it. Here are the winners, of course, in the America GT category. That's Charles Morgan on the left, son Rob on the right. Definitely feeling the effects of the heat, but he came through with a brilliant drive. And 6 hours ago, well, the cars look like this, getting ready to start, pristine, ready to run. At the green, some good battles developed. The racing was incredibly close and incredibly tight-knit as everybody was hoping for that win. But little chinks started to develop, moments like this. Problems developing, in some cases mechanical, and others just pure happenstance. But they persevered, they pushed hard, they survived little brake fires. Some of the problems, well, temporary. Others, a bit more permanent. Some great stories developed, like come from the back drives. It was a great race here for the 2002 6 hours of the Glen. We're so glad you could join us here. For Jeremy Dale, for Guy Hobbs, and for Sandy Hang, I'm Greg Kramer. Congratulations to Chris Dyson and James Weaver. Thanks for joining us. Take care.